Chapter 7:11. A joyous trip to the devouring sea came to an end after a celebration. After 3 hours of waiting, the players were sent back to the Bakey Mansion of the Dead for free when they logged on. In fact, as the players became more familiar with the game, returning to the city after death had become a necessary means of transportation. After all, the underworld was huge, and it would take a long time to travel to and fro. It would be more convenient to stay in the forum for 3 hours after death. This time, the players returned with an unprecedentedly rich harvest. The shortage of resources caused by the increasing number of life profession players was solved. The large amount of resources in the auction house also attracted the attention of players from other servers. At this moment, players from other servers were also happily choosing the spiritual materials they wanted in the original server's auction house. Although there was a processing fee for cross-server purchases, these players would still buy the items they needed without hesitation. It could be said that the appearance of this batch of resources had made the entire player circle prosperous. Finally, the players did not forget the Sea King's profits. Although this batch of resources was extremely abundant, the players valued the sea leeks that could bring them continuous benefit. Through several collaborations, it was proven that the value of the sea leeks, which had been the #1 popular boss for 3 consecutive years, was huge. Therefore, before the last celebration of leaving the devouring sea began, the players had already prepared the resources for the Sea King. This batch of resources was counted by the major guilds and handed over to Yin Xiaoqi for safekeeping, waiting for the Sea King to need it. Netherworld, the devouring sea. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The new messenger finally arrived at the Bone Island after handing over his mission. The officers of the devouring division finally heaved a sigh of relief. They trembled as they reported to the messenger what had happened in the devouring sea during this period of time. This included the arrival of the Calamity Clan, the loss of a large amount of resources in the resource warehouse, and so on. Although they knew that a large amount of resources had been consumed and that they would be severely punished by the headquarters, they did not dare to hide anything. The new messenger was also shocked when he heard the news. Obviously, he did not expect so many things to happen in just a month. Therefore, he decided to contact the headquarters and reported everything that had happened in the devouring division. On the same day, a godly state powerhouse tore through space from the headquarters of Netherworld in the Central Sea. As the person with the highest authority in the current stage of the devouring division, the Sea King immediately met the messenger. At this time, in the main hall in the center of the Bone Island, a one-armed man wearing gilded armor stood in the center of the hall. His eyes were pale silver, and his entire body was emitting a dull silver light. He was quietly listening to the Sea King's report. After a while, the Sea King, who had finished reporting the recent happenings, looked at the oracle in front of him and said, "Divine Emissary Su, this is the summary of the recent events in the branch." Hearing this, Su Yin nodded slightly, then frowned and said, "Have you heard of the Calamity Race? I've never heard of it. This force has only recently appeared in the devouring sea. During this time, they have been plundering everywhere and have made countless enemies. They are extremely arrogant." Although he had done something wrong, the Sea King's face did not blush when he spoke. He was very calm. "A force that I've never heard of before dares to act so arrogantly in a new sea region. This is really strange. Yes, I don't know where the Calamity tribe gets their confidence from. We are also very confused." The Sea King immediately replied, "The way I see it, there can only be 2 explanations for this. First, the Calamity Race is strong enough to withstand the revenge of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. However, this is obviously not the case. According to what you said, the Calamity Race has already been annihilated. The second explanation is that someone is instructing them. They have an even stronger force behind them to act as their protective umbrella. This gives them the confidence to offend the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce." After saying that, Su Yin paused for a moment before continuing. To be able to establish a force of this scale, the leader of the Calamity race can't be a fool. There must be a motive for this. At this time, Su Yin's mind was constantly analyzing the Sea King's words, trying to find the motive of the Calamity race's actions. This time, he had received orders from the headquarters to come here. He originally thought that it was a simple plundering incident. However, after listening to the Sea King's narration, he realized that there was something strange about this plundering incident. If there was really a force behind this plundering incident, then this matter was no longer as simple as it seemed. Thinking of this, Su Yin had the intention to thoroughly investigate this matter. After thinking for a moment, he raised his head and looked at the Sea King. "Tell me the location of the Calamity race's annihilation." Upon hearing this, the Sea King immediately told Su Yin the coordinates of the island where the player clan had disappeared. Su Yin nodded slightly. He extended his left hand and made a grabbing motion. The space suddenly distorted, revealing a black, hollow crack. Then, Su Yin stepped into it and disappeared from the hall. Looking at the departing Su Yin, the Sea King pursed his lips and raised his middle finger at the crack. Now that the players were all dead, so what if he felt that this matter was strange? If he could find any clues, he'd be lucky. In the sea near Miracle Island, a figure slowly appeared. After glancing around, Su Yin galloped toward the broken island in the distance. When he arrived above Miracle Island, Su Yin began to carefully observe the situation of the island below. At this time, Miracle Island had been completely destroyed due to the chaotic battle between the players. Other than the rubble, there was no sign of life. After observing for a while, Su Yin, who could not find any clues, descended to the center of the island. He began to wander around the island. As he observed, Su Yin's expression became more and more solemn, but the doubts in his heart increased. After walking around the broken Miracle Island once, Su Yin gradually had a guess in his heart. He immediately tore space again and returned to the Bone Island. At this time, the Sea King and the middle and lower level officers were still waiting for Su Yin's return. As his figure appeared, everyone immediately stepped forward. "Oracle, did you find anything from this investigation?" the Sea King asked first. Su Yin shook his head and then looked at the Sea King with a puzzled expression. "According to what you said, the final elimination of the Calamity race relied on a formation? However, the traces of destruction on Miracle Island seemed to be caused by a battle. So, what formation did you use?" "One of the 32 ancient killing formations, the Heaven and Earth sealing formation," one of the officers answered before the Sea King could speak. "Who set up the formation?" "It was Mu Hai from the War Chamber of Commerce." Upon hearing this, Su Yin nodded with a smile on her face. Then, she looked at the Sea King and said, He then looked at the Sea King and said, "Are you sure you set up the Heaven and Earth sealing formation?" Hearing this, the Sea King suddenly felt that something was wrong. However, he still braced himself and said, "It was indeed the Heaven and Earth sealing formation. I obtained this formation by chance." "Ha ha ha, Mu Hai, right? You can believe what you said." "Oracle Su, what do you mean?" the Sea King immediately asked with a serious expression. "If it was any other formation, I might not understand. However, I am very familiar with the Heaven and Earth sealing formation." Su Yin pointed at his empty right sleeve. "Do you know why this right hand disappeared? It was the Heaven and Earth sealing formation." As he spoke, a trace of hatred appeared on Su Yin's face. The scene of him being trapped in the formation appeared in his mind. The pain from that time had not faded until now. Although he could reforge his body after reaching the godly state, he could not reforge his right arm no matter how hard he tried because of the Heaven and Earth sealing formation. That was because the energy of the Heaven and Earth sealing formation was still in his body. It completely suppressed his desire to reforge his right arm. Therefore, he had a deep memory of the Heaven and Earth sealing formation. Hearing this, the Sea King was shocked. He knew that the situation was not good. However, thinking that there was no evidence, the Sea King gritted his teeth and said, "Oracle Su, I did set up the heaven and earth sealing formation at that time. Maybe I was not skilled enough when setting up the formation, which led to a deviation in the formation's effect." Hearing this, Su-in shook his head. "It's not a deviation, it's just that the effect never appeared. I never said that you did not set up the heaven and earth sealing formation. I sensed a familiar aura of a formation around Miracle Island. Therefore, I am sure that you set up the heaven and earth sealing formation. However, there is no aura of a formation inside it. In other words, the formation is only operating on the surface, not the inside." As he spoke, Su-in paused and then continued. "Moreover, do you know the origin of the heaven and earth sealing formation? Do you know why this formation was lost?" I don't know." At this moment, the Sea King's heart was beating wildly. He had a premonition of danger. "Now I am sure of one thing. I think you must know about the Shadow Clan." A sarcastic smile appeared on Su-yin's face. "Oracle, why do you say that? I have never heard of the Shadow Clan." "No, you must know about it. Maybe it's a remnant of the Shadow Clan." Looking at the Sea King's horrified face, Su-in continued. "By the way, I forgot to tell you. Back then, I personally participated in the encirclement of the Shadow Clan and personally experienced the strangulation of the heaven and earth sealing formation. All traces of the formation were erased by us at that time. I can be sure that there are no remnants of the heaven and earth sealing formation's blueprints circulating outside." Hearing this, the Sea King knew that he was finished. At that time, in order to make the plan look relatively real, he used the heaven and earth sealing formation. This indeed easily deceived the leaders of the major forces in the nearby seas. It was understandable that the leaders of the major forces felt that it was one of the ancient 32 killing formations after all. However, the Sea King did not expect that he would be in danger because of the heaven and earth sealing formation. "Therefore, I can be sure that there is something wrong with your formation. From this, I can conclude that there is something wrong with you too." Looking at the Sea King, Su-in continued. "At this moment, I still have some doubts in my heart. I wonder if you can dispel them for me?" The Sea King did not answer. His mind was constantly thinking of reasons to refute. "The first doubt is, what is the relationship between you and the Calamity Clan, and why did you suddenly disappear from Miracle Island? The second doubt is, are you a descendant of the Shadow Clan or a spy planted in my Netherworld Chamber of Commerce by other hostile forces? Of course, you can choose not to answer, but I have ways to make you tell me the truth." As soon as he said this, the surrounding officers were in an uproar. Obviously, they did not believe that the Sea King, who had risked his life to protect them, was a spy. After all, they had seen the Sea King's clansmen fight against the Calamity Clan with their own eyes. They had also seen the corpses of the Mute soldiers. However, looking at the confident Oracle Su, they suddenly believed him. Chapter 7:12. Moreover, the Sea King already had a better way to break out of this predicament. Then, his escape plan could be carried out. At this moment, Su-in was filled with anger. However, the smile on his face soon froze because a crack had appeared in the Sea King's soul as soon as the soul-searching began. His soul trembled violently as if it would explode at any time. Because they had already been exposed, going back would only lead to death, so there was only one path left for them to take. The reason why he had been risking his life to fight for a chance for Heisui and the others to leave was not only for the safety of the Mute clan, but also for Su-in to dispel the doubts in his heart. At this moment, Su-in obviously believed him. "Take me to them," Su-in said coldly. "Nothing is impossible. Although the Shadow Clan was annihilated by you, some of the clansmen still managed to escape and build a new force outside. Although they are not powerful now, they have never forgotten the hatred from the past. I am one of the forces that they have cultivated to overthrow the Underworld Chamber of Commerce." After the Sea King revealed the coordinates, Su-Yin, who had been waiting for a long time, immediately summoned the Sea King to his side. He then tore the space with one hand and stepped into the space passage with the Sea King. Since the clansmen had evacuated, he had nothing to worry about. The next thing to do was to get rid of this messenger Su. Coincidentally, when the Shadow Clan openly went against the Underworld Chamber of Commerce, this messenger Su also participated in the operation to destroy the Shadow Clan. At this moment, in their opinion, only the player clan could save the Sea King. A smile appeared on Su-Yin's face when he saw this scene with his consciousness. At this stage, the Baiki player clan was a force that even the Underworld Chamber of Commerce attached great importance to. If the coordinates provided were from Baiki, Su-Yin would definitely be suspicious. "Tell me, I am very curious about the value of your secret." At this moment, when he heard that the descendants of the Shadow Clan were still alive, Su-Yin could no longer remain calm. In order to break this shackle, the Sea King had tried countless methods, but they all failed. He did not expect that it would become a life-saving straw at this moment. Back then, the strongest warriors of the Shadow Clan, the Shadow Legion, were all dead. Although there might be danger on the other side of the space passage, in Su-Yin's opinion, it was nothing to be afraid of. "I have agreed to your request. I will not stop your clansmen from leaving. Now, can you take me to find the descendants of the Shadow Clan? Go and explain. I'll wait for you here." The Sea King nodded and immediately walked out of the main hall. Su-Yin's consciousness followed closely behind, probing the Sea King's every move. "What guarantee do you want? We've been exposed. You should know where to go now. I can tell you where the descendants of the Shadow Clan are. I can even personally take you to find them, but I only have one condition. Release my clansmen." A smile appeared on Su-Yin's face. The Sea King nodded in agreement. Seeing this, Su-Yin immediately followed into the water. "You have no room to bargain. Even if you don't tell me, I can still obtain the information I want from your soul," Su-Yin said coldly. At this moment, the Sea King felt his spirit tremble, and his entire body was in pain. It was as if the power that was surging into his body was about to split him in half. I'll do as you say. I can tell you a secret. This secret can definitely be exchanged for the lives of my clansmen." Seeing this, Su-Yin did not dare to rashly continue. Seeing this, Su-Yin followed closely. This was because he was indeed using the Shadow Clan's inheritance formation. During this time, He Sui and the others quickly led the Mu-Te clan away from the Bone Island and headed toward the Void Ocean. "I can tell you everything I know, but I have one condition. Release my clansmen." About 10 minutes later, the two of them appeared in the area where Mo Xiaoxin found the treasure chest of the Soul Prayer Wine. The Sea King nodded. Seeing the Sea King's return, Su-Yin immediately said. Hearing this, Su-Yin's face turned pale. "Speak, tell me everything clearly, and I can let you and your clansmen die without suffering." Su-Yin spoke again. The Sea King, who understood that there was no way out, immediately shook his head. "I can tell you this secret now. You can decide if this secret is worth releasing my clansmen or not." After a moment of absent-mindedness, the Sea King, who had passed through the space passage, found himself in the Kuelong Ocean, which was the area he provided the coordinates. If the Sea King was not of great value, he would definitely make the Sea King pay for his words. Hearing this, Su-Yin's curiosity was piqued by the Sea King. Soon, Su-Yin found the Sea King's soul and began searching it violently. He did not care if the Sea King's soul would collapse because of such a violent method. At this moment, the Sea King's face turned pale. He took a deep breath. Su-Yin was speechless. Passing through the countercurrent whirlpools, the two of them kept diving. At this moment, Su-Yin also made a request to the Sea King. "Sure, but you have to wait. After my clansmen leave the devouring ocean safely, I will bring you there." After taking a deep breath and calming the surging emotions in his heart, Su-Yin looked at the Sea King coldly and said, however, This would not make Su-in believe him. You mean the Shadow Clan still exists? Impossible. Hearing this, the Sea King's heart sank. At least it comforts me. At least I gave them a chance. Even though the Sea King took away the Death Lord's ability, the soul shackle did not disappear. After a while, the Sea King met Sui and the others. Hearing this, Su-in was a little stunned. You go first, Su-in said. Therefore, at this moment, no matter what he said, he would not be convinced by the oracle. At that time, Su-in said the Sea King's idea of letting his clansmen leave first was childish. However, the Sea King had firmly grasped the information he wanted and forced him to agree. Looking at the Sea King's back, they knew the situation was not good. Sui and the others quickly understood what the Sea King meant by his words. To find the player clan. Half a day passed quickly. The Sea King nodded, looked around, and then headed toward the direction of the void ocean. Let my clansmen leave first. At this moment, the Sea King did not say much other than one sentence. Hearing this, the Sea King grinned. Looking at Su-in's pale face, a smile appeared on the Sea King's pale face. After landing, Su-in looked around. At this moment, he believed what the Sea King said. Looking at Su-in's confident attitude, the Sea King knew that no matter what he said, it would be useless. Hearing this, the expressions of Sui and the others changed. This time, the Sea King did not insist and immediately reported the coordinates of a sea area. I need a guarantee. How can I believe you with just your words? We are all adults, can you not be so childish? A sneer appeared on the Sea King's pale face. In fact, the Sea King had thought of bringing Su-in to Baki where the player clan was. You can try. The Sea King nodded and stepped into it. Su-in followed closely behind. Where is the Shadow Clan? Are you going to say that you will only tell me this secret after letting your clansmen leave? When he said this, Su-in had already made up his mind. After killing the descendants of the Shadow Clan, he would look for the Sea King's clansmen. He did not believe that the Sea King's clansmen could escape to anywhere. Of course, it was not to return to the Kuelong Ocean. Instead, it was the sole taboo that the Death Lord had set on him when he lent his power to him. After galloping forward for a distance with Su-in, the Sea King's figure suddenly dived into the water. In the end, the topic returned to the beginning. Thinking of this, Sui and the others quickly gathered their clansmen to prepare for an emergency evacuation. However, when he thought of the Sea King's heaven and earth sealing formation, Su-in suddenly believed him a little more. Ahem. In order to protect the secret, I have to use some tricks. My soul can't withstand the probing. If you want to forcefully search my soul, it will only make my soul scatter. But you won't be able to get the secret you want. He was personally present during the operation to annihilate the Shadow Clan and witnessed the destruction of the Shadow Kingdom. When he heard the Sea King's words, his first thought was that the Sea King was lying. Implanting the soul shackles in his soul and searching his soul would lead to the destruction of his soul. This was not the Sea King's doing. Hearing this, Su-in took a deep breath. As for the Shadow Clan who cut off his right arm, Su-in had always regarded them as his enemy. Unfortunately, the Shadow Clan had long been annihilated, so the hatred of losing his arm could no longer be vented. This time, Su-in did not waste any more words. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the Sea King in front of him. Then, he grabbed the top of the Sea King's skull. Immediately, a surge of divine power gushed out of his body and rushed into the Sea King's body, beginning to search his soul. It could be said that he understood the Shadow Clan very well. The Sea King had already discovered this from a few words. Do you think that's possible? Since you have the courage to do it, I think you have long been prepared to bear the consequences of failure. So, don't say such childish words. Your clansmen must die. If one often walks by the river, one's shoes will always get wet. The Sea King knew that he had failed this time. The Sea King nodded. After a moment of silence, he said, All right, I promise to let your clansmen live, but you have to take me to find the descendants of the Shadow Clan first. After all, how could he put such a shackle on his own soul? Looking at the spatial passage, a cruel smile appeared on Su Yin's face. If he forcibly searched the Sea King's soul, he was sure that the Sea King's soul would instantly explode. Then, he would not be able to obtain any useful information. There's a spatial passage here. They are hiding at the other end of it. As he spoke, the Sea King strode to the two dragon head pillars and patted them lightly. Suddenly, a spatial passage appeared. Under the raging divine power, the Sea King could not resist at all. His soul was immediately entangled by the divine power. If I want to kill them, the result will be the same even if they leave the devouring sea region. Stalling for time is useless, Su Yin said coldly. The moment Su Yin stepped into the spatial passage, the Shadow Clan warriors who had been sleeping for a long time in the underground palace suddenly opened their eyes. Didn't you want to know my identity? Let me tell you now. In reality, I am someone cultivated by the Shadow Clan. My goal is to overthrow your underworld chamber of commerce. Moreover, do you really think that the Shadow Clan has been overthrown by you? As for whether they could ask for help from the Player Clan in time, they had no idea. After explaining things to Heisui, the Sea King once again returned to the hall. The smile on Su Yin's face disappeared. He looked at the Sea King coldly and asked, "Give me a reason to believe you." Chapter 7:13. The moment the Sea King led Su Yin into the space passage, the Shadow Legion sensed the aura of their new master, the Sea King. At the same time, they also discovered a very familiar aura beside this aura. The underworld chamber of commerce was their lifelong enemy. Even after death, they had never forgotten the hatred from back then. The Shadow Legion was forced to operate at this moment, and they all woke up in an instant. At this moment, the Sea King and Su Yin had already passed through the space passage and arrived at the cave filled with soul-praying flowers. Su Yin's eyes immediately scanned the surroundings. He felt the familiar aura of the Shadow Clan here. At this moment, Su Yin's expression gradually turned ferocious. He knew that the Sea King had not lied to him. Without waiting for the Sea King to react, he grabbed the Sea King and flashed out of the cave. He followed the direction of the aura and arrived at the mausoleum's hall. However, when he saw everything in front of him, the cruelty on Su Yin's face disappeared. His face instantly turned pale. In his imagination, this should be the habitat of the descendants of the Shadow Clan. However, at this moment, he did not see a single living person. All he felt was a dense aura of death. At the same time, he saw many familiar faces from his memory. As far as the eye could see, the densely packed Shadow Clan warriors were lined up neatly as if they were waiting for the horn of battle to be blown. All of this did not match the plot in Su Yin's memory. Even now, he clearly remembered that these warriors had all been killed. All that was left were broken limbs. There was not even a complete corpse. However, why was this person wearing black armor standing in front of him? Su Yin, I remember you. At this moment, a warrior standing at the forefront of the Shadow Clan Legion suddenly opened his eyes. His dark eyes stared at Su Yin, and the aura of death on his body gradually thickened. Looking at the familiar face, Su Yin was extremely shocked. He immediately turned to look at the Sea King and said with a ferocious expression, "You tricked me! Would you believe me if I said I didn't?" The Sea King awkwardly tried to defend himself. Although he had tricked Su Yin into the Shadow Clan mausoleum, he was still in Su Yin's hands. Thus, he did not dare to speak ruthlessly. Die. However, the angry shadow still slapped the Sea King. My life is over. Seeing Su Yin's angry attack, the Sea King wailed in his heart and gave Su Yin the middle finger. This middle finger was his final act of stubbornness, but just as the palm was about to strike the Sea King, the crystal coffin in the center of the mausoleum suddenly opened. Su Yin's palm stopped right in front of the Sea King, unable to strike any further. At this moment, the little blue boy emerged from the coffin and winked at the Sea King with a smile. The Sea King, "Hurry up and run, my master." The little blue boy smiled. When the Sea King heard this, he immediately glanced at Su-Yin, who was frozen to the side. Then, he quickly flew in the direction of the Shadow Clan warriors. Slip away, slip away. Tell me, why are you still alive? Su-Yin was terrified and asked loudly. The blue boy did not say anything. He pointed at one of them. Kill! As soon as he finished speaking, the 5 godly state warriors in the front row of the Shadow Legion disappeared on the spot at the same time, and the spears in their hands instantly pierced Su-Yin's body. Boom! The long spear collided with Su-Yin's divine body, creating ripples of energy. A pained expression immediately appeared on Su-Yin's face. At this moment, he already knew why he could not move. It was because the entire mausoleum was a formation. Everything inside was under the control of the formation's controller, and he did not have the ability to break free. At this moment, his heart was filled with regret. He knew that he had been tricked by the Sea King. He also knew that the Sea King's promise to let his clansmen go and take him to find the descendants of the Shadow Clan was a lie. In reality, the Sea King just wanted him to enter this mausoleum, and it had nothing to do with his clansmen. He only used the safety of his clansmen as a cover to make him believe it. Ah! Feeling the aura of death invading his body, Su-Yin roared angrily. He gathered all the strength in his body and slowly twisted his right arm to resist. At this moment, a long spear broke through his physical defense and pierced into his chest. Su-Yin's body trembled. His remaining arm trembled as he held the long spear in front of his chest. Shadow Clan, I want you dead. At this moment, Su-Yin already knew that he did not have long to live. His resentful gaze swept across the Shadow Legion warriors before him, and finally focused on the Sea King. I will be waiting for you in the 6 paths of reincarnation. As soon as he finished speaking, Su-Yin suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a seal. The moment this seal appeared, it flickered with a dazzling light. Seeing this seal, the expression of the blue boy on the crystal coffin suddenly changed. With a wave of his hand, he manipulated the mausoleum's great formation and crushed the seal into powder. After spitting out the seal, Su-Yin's divine body finally could not withstand the invasion of the external force, and the remaining 4 spears pierced through his body at the same time. In an instant, the aura of death spread throughout his body. Su-Yin's complexion gradually turned gray, and the silver glow on the surface of his body began to dissipate bit by bit. At this moment, the 5 Shadow Clan warriors besides Su-Yin had strength similar to Su-Yin's, and their strength when they were alive was even higher than Su-Yin's. Now that they were working together, coupled with the mausoleum's great formation restricting his freedom, Su-Yin was completely powerless to resist such an attack. Finally, the aura of death exploded in his body. Su-Yin's divine soul surged and suddenly shattered, and the divine seal fell off. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared from the mausoleum and entered the 6 paths of reincarnation. Seeing that Su-Yin had been killed, the Sea King heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that he had made the right bet. The Shadow Clan indeed had a way to help him resolve this crisis. However, the Sea King knew that his reputation as a war merchant had been tarnished, and he could no longer hide in the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce to cheat others. His good days had finally come to an end. Next, he would definitely have to face the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce's revenge. At this moment, the Sea King felt extremely pained. He felt that he was being suppressed before he had even matured. It was too King difficult. Thinking of this, the Sea King turned to look at the Shadow Clan warriors beside him. He knew that it was time for this force to come into being. This would also be his greatest reliance against the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. They're coming. At this moment, the blue boy on the crystal coffin suddenly said with a serious expression, "Who?" Hearing this, the Sea King was stunned. Before Su-Yin died, he sent a message back. It was that seal just now. The Netherworld Chamber of Commerce's forces are about to arrive. Hearing this, the Sea King's face was filled with fear. This Motherf Kerr didn't give him a chance to develop at all? What a bastard! Although the Sea King had not personally witnessed the strength of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce, he had some understanding. Although the Shadow Clan had revived, they still did not have the strength to fight the current Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. At this moment, the Sea King panicked, knowing that he had seemingly harmed the Shadow Clan that had been in hiding for a long time. They'll come eventually. There's no need to blame yourself. Fine, let's fight. The blue boy seemed to understand what the Sea King was thinking. With a faint smile, his figure elongated, turning into a young man in his 20s in the blink of an eye. A 2-meter-long spiritual energy war blade slowly appeared in his hand. With a wave of the war blade, all the Shadow Clan warriors took a step forward, their auras rising. At this time, above the sea surface, a spatial crack suddenly appeared. Then, one figure after another emerged from it. Without exception, these figures all had a divine seal on their foreheads that represented the God realm. Just a moment ago, the headquarters received a message from Su-Yin before she died. This message attracted the attention of the Netherworld Chamber's upper echelons. When they found out that the Shadow Clan still existed, they could not sit still. He immediately dispatched several dozen High God Realm Masters and an Ancient God Realm Master. Due to the existence of the Mausoleum's grand formation, they were unable to teleport into the Mausoleum. However, they were able to arrive at the sea surface above the Mausoleum using the coordinate. After the people were assembled, their divine senses pierced into the sea bottom and began to investigate carefully. In a short while, they sensed the strange existence in the depths of the sea and discovered the existence of an extremely special space. At this time, this space was constantly moving toward the surface of the sea. Tree Venerable, it's definitely the Shadow Clan. At this time, a woman in the crowd waved her hand to disperse the light of the divine seal on her forehead, and respectfully spoke to the hunchbacked figure. I understand. The man nodded slightly and at the same time clenched his fist. While waiting, a huge water bubble swelled up on the sea surface, and then a huge mausoleum broke through the water curtain and emerged. Seeing this scene, the Tree Venerable's murky eyes flashed, and he suddenly threw a punch forward. With this punch, a vast vitality surged on the sea surface, and the sky was instantly covered by a pale green energy fluctuation. The fist imprint arrived with a loud bang and heavily smashed onto the defensive barrier outside the mausoleum. The boundless vitality washed over the barrier layer like a tide, causing it to flicker incessantly. Gradually, cracks appeared. Boom! In the end, the defensive barrier could not withstand the power of this punch and collapsed, followed by the collapse of the mausoleum. As the gravel fell, rows of black figures appeared in front of the people of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce at this moment. At this moment, many of the God State experts of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce did not participate in the encirclement of the Shadow Clan, but they had also heard of the legend of the Shadow Clan. At this moment, they did not dare to be careless and were ready for battle. However, when their eyes turned to the Tree Venerable, their hearts were filled with confidence for this battle. This was because the hunchbacked figure in front of them was always victorious. Even in the Central Sea area of the Netherworld, he had never been defeated. He was one of the top experts in the entire Central Sea area. Therefore, no matter how strong the Shadow Clan was, it was impossible for them to be a match for the Tree Venerable. This was something they could be sure of. Looking at the dozens of members of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce in front of them, the Shadow Warriors' murderous intent was constantly surging. They had thought that such a day would come countless times. Although this moment was brought forward, they did not have the slightest fear in the face of battle. They were already dead, so what if they were to die again? However, before the battle began, Shadow Killer looked at the Sea King who was protected by the warriors in the center and said, "Leave. Although we've only known each other for a short time, you've obtained the inheritance, so you're our master. If there's another chance, I'll look for you and pledge my life to follow you. I've let you down." Hearing this, Shadow Killer laughed heartily. "I should thank you. In fact, I've always understood that our revenge plan is too remote. If we really wait until we establish a force that can compete with the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce before coming out, I think it'll take a very, very long time. Maybe it'll never happen. Thank you for letting us take the last step." Hearing this, the Sea King sighed in his heart. "If we die in battle, then we'll go to the 6 paths of reincarnation to follow our old master. If we survive, then we'll follow you. That's a promise." After Shadow Killer finished speaking, he pointed the spiritual energy blade at the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce in front of him. At this moment, the Sea King felt guilty, but he knew that he would only be a burden if he stayed here, so he immediately turned around and flew back. At the same time, he received news from Sui and the others. Knowing that the Sea King was in danger, the player army was on their way. Chapter 7:14. Noticing that a figure was leaving, the woman beside the venerable tree looked puzzled. Then, her figure flickered and appeared behind the Shadow Tribe warriors, trying to stop the Sea King from leaving. Seeing this, Shadow Killer immediately waved the blade in his hand. Suddenly, countless black shadow blades crisscrossed and blocked the woman's path. The battle broke out at this moment. All the Shadow Tribe warriors roared and took a step forward. Their figures turned into phantoms as they collectively rushed toward the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. At this time, Shadow Killer also blocked the Underworld Chamber of Commerce's divine messenger. His figure flickered and hundreds of black shadow clones trapped her in place, trying to create an opportunity for the Sea King to escape. At this time, the divine messenger's eyes were still focused on the Sea King. Although she was trapped, she did not panic at all. She touched her forehead with her left hand and suddenly, a purple shadow emerged from the divine seal and went straight toward the Sea King. Seeing this scene, Shadow Killer was shocked and immediately wanted to stop the purple phantom. However, the purple shadow passed through the moment it touched Shadow Killer's blade, as if it did not have a physical body. The divine messenger did not give Shadow Killer a chance to stop it. With a wave of her hand, hundreds of tiny purple ropes were scattered and all of Shadow Killer's clones were restrained in place. Unable to break free from the ropes, Shadow Killer could only watch helplessly as the purple shadow flew toward the Sea King in the distance. Stop struggling. The Netherworld Chamber of Commerce is no longer the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce of your era. It is now much stronger than before. Even if your Shadow Tribe is 10 times or 100 times stronger, you still have no chance. Give up resisting. Looking at the struggling Shadow Killer, a smile appeared on the divine messenger's face. Shadow Killer did not speak. He used all the power in his body to break the ropes and pointed his blade at the divine messenger, trying to kill her. If he wasn't wrong, that illusory figure just now should be a curse ability. Therefore, there was still room for redemption if he killed the spellcaster. The divine messenger obviously had no intention of fighting Shadow Killer. Her figure swayed on the spot, leaving several afterimages as she constantly dodged Shadow Killer's attacks. On the other side, the Shadow Legion warriors were also fighting with the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. Although the individual gods of the Underworld Chamber of Commerce were far stronger than the Shadow Warriors, who were already in the state of dead souls, there were only about 70 of them. Their numbers were still incomparable to the Shadow Clan. Relying on their teamwork, the Shadow Army was like a school of fish in the sea resisting the bite of a shark. They advanced and retreated in an orderly manner, rendering the Underworld Trade Association's gods helpless. The only one who did not make a move at this moment was the venerable tree. His eyes were also locked on the Sea King who was leaving, but he did not make a move. At this moment, the curse of the goddess messenger had caught up with the Sea King and instantly entered his body. At that moment, the Sea King felt weak all over, as if all the strength in his body had been drained. He tried to continue flying toward the void ocean, but the death energy in his body seemed to have been frozen and could no longer circulate smoothly. As a result, his body became lower and lower until he finally fell into the water and continued to sink. Seeing this scene, the venerable tree was expressionless. He turned his gaze to the Shadow Legion that was fighting with the oracles. Retreat! Hearing the venerable tree's words, the more than 70 god messengers present were shocked and immediately followed the order to retreat. At this time, the Shadow Legion seized the opportunity of the god messengers' retreat. Like wasps, they gathered together and attacked the retreating god messengers. Seeing this scene, the venerable tree's turbid eyes lit up. Blue veins bulged on his withered right arm as he suddenly swung his fist at the attacking Shadow Legion. Boom! The high-spirited vitality emerged again. The sky was filled with pale green light spots of life, sprinkling on the Shadow Clan warriors like raindrops. At this moment, countless Shadow Clan warriors let out a shrill roar. This vigorous vitality seeped into their souls and dispelled the undead flesh and blood that Elder Ing had forged for them. The figures of countless Shadow Clan warriors exploded in the air. It could be said that they were defenseless in the face of this punch. With this punch alone, nearly a quarter of the Shadow Legion was wiped out. Seeing this scene, the underworld gods were also shocked. Many of them had never seen the venerable tree in action. They had only heard of his undefeatable legend. Now that they saw it with their own eyes, their hearts were still shocked. The best home for the dead should not be to fight for the obsession of their life. Your persistence now is meaningless. Looking at the scattered Shadow Clan army in front of him, the venerable tree said slowly, "We are willing to avenge the Shadow King. We don't need your guidance." One of the Shadow Clan warriors pointed the spear in his hand at the venerable tree and said angrily, "In this world where life is as worthless as grass, it is difficult to live. Why use your life as a tool for revenge? Since this life is over, you should find a new beginning and continue to work hard to live until one day you can control your own life. In the end, you still don't understand the value of life." At this moment, the venerable tree could not help but sigh. However, he knew that these Shadow Clan warriors in front of him would not listen to his words at all. The truth was just as he thought. The scattered Shadow Clan army regrouped again. With the roar of attack from the three leaders, they once again fearlessly charged toward him. It was as if they were carrying out what he had said. It was worthless, but it was duty-bound. This time, the venerable tree did not waste any more words. He suddenly swung his fist forward again. In an instant, a huge spatial vortex appeared in the sky, sucking in a large number of Shadow Clan warriors. They were ground into black mist and dissipated in the vortex. Without too many moves, the venerable tree's 2 attacks had already determined the outcome of this battle. In fact, he alone was equivalent to all the warriors of the Shadow Clan army. In the distance, Shadow Killer watched as the warriors were ground into black mist one after another. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He had imagined countless times that the Shadow Clan would revive one day in the future and then compete with the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. He would carry out the will of the Shadow King and break the hegemony of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce in the sea. However, the strength displayed by the venerable tree at this moment had shattered his fantasies. It turned out that everything was just a fantasy. They were weaker than before, but the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce was stronger than before. Back then, their Shadow Dynasty was not a match for the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. How could they compete with them now? Even if they knew that the final outcome of this battle was defeat, it was still unacceptable for Shadow Killer to be defeated in such a crushing manner. Even if they used all their strength at this moment, they would not be able to hurt the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce at all. All their means were in vain. The furious Shadow Killer completely erupted at this moment. He swung his sword to repel the female emissary and then rushed toward the venerable tree. Looking at the Shadow Clan army that was left with less than half, The venerable tree's expression was neither happy nor sad. Killing was not what he yearned for, but sometimes it was a necessary means. Because each had their own standpoint. After all, they were still different and could not work together. At this moment, the venerable tree put away the pity for life in his heart and clenched his fists. The power of the fist law turned into countless runes that lingered on the venerable tree's right fist. He was extremely serious about this punch. Taking a deep breath, the venerable tree suddenly swung an earth-shattering punch. I'll use this punch to send you into the 6 paths of reincarnation. The world turned gray at this moment, as if all life had been taken away. The figures of all the Shadow Clan warriors were distorted in this gray world. But at this moment, a soaring sword will appeared in the distance, cutting through this gray world. Suddenly, the world had color again. However, this sword will did not completely eliminate the gray world. The deeper it went, the slower its speed became. It gradually stopped in place, and could not go any further. The fist and sword will collided. At this moment, the venerable tree's fist had the absolute upper hand, and it slowly squeezed the sword will out of the gray world formed by the fist. At this moment, it seemed that the death of the Shadow Clan warriors was already a foregone conclusion. However, at this moment, the venerable tree waved his hand and retracted the fist world. His turbid eyes also became clear at this moment. He turned his head and looked in the direction of the sword will. In the distant sky, a man in white stood in the air with 9 spiritual swords on his back. It was not the familiar face he imagined, but a stranger he had never seen before. At this moment, the venerable tree was stunned. When he returned to the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce's headquarters by chance, he learned of the death of the Sword Master. At that moment, the venerable tree's heart was filled with sorrow. The most fundamental purpose of coming to the border between the Kuelong Ocean and the Void Ocean was to investigate the cause of the death of the Sword Master. When did the two of them walk together and keep moving forward for the sake of survival? They had traversed the seemingly endless desert together. They had also been forced to work in the dark mines together. They had been constantly growing stronger for the sake of the bluest Central Sea region. Time flew by. Even if they had everything they once desired, some feelings had never changed. Looking at Aojian, who was standing in the air, and feeling the vigorous sword will aura on him, the venerable tree seemed to see Mu in the past. At that time, he was also high-spirited and high-spirited. He had entered the divine state long before he stepped into the Central Ocean and became the #1 expert in the sea region. Although his strength surpassed Mu after he stepped into the Central Ocean, in the heart of the venerable tree, Mu was always the strongest symbol of an era and also the person closest to him. At this moment, feeling the sword will aura of the rule of law on Aojian, the venerable tree knew that Mu was really gone. At this moment, his heart could not stop trembling, and tears fell from his turbid eyes. Even in front of the gods, he did not have the slightest thought of hiding his emotions. In the distance, Aojian realized that the venerable tree was crying and could not help but be surprised. The fight just now made Aojian understand that he was no match for the venerable tree at all, and he was prepared to fight to the death. However, what he did not expect was that the venerable tree would cry when he saw him. "Do I look so touching?" Aojian could not help but touch his cheek, feeling puzzled. However, looking at the venerable tree who was crying, Aojian did not know why he felt very upset. There was an extremely strange illusion, as if an old friend was mourning him in front of his tombstone, which really puzzled Aojian. At this moment, the venerable tree's figure disappeared from the spot. When he appeared again, he was already in front of Aojian. He looked at Aojian carefully and said slowly, "You have obtained Mu's inheritance. Are you willing to go to the Central Ocean with me after you obtained Mu's inheritance?" Hearing this, Aojian was stunned. "Isn't this asking me to be a spy for the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce? I will definitely not agree." Chapter 7:15. In the face of the tree master's inquiry, Aojian immediately shook his head to express his refusal. That was because he had more important things to do now. That was to ask Emo Lanlan and her son to forgive him. This time, he came because he heard that the Sea King was in a life-and-death crisis, so he hurried over with the rule of Sword Will. After all, he had contact with the Sea King before and even drank with him. They were considered friends. This time, he saved the Shadow Clan warriors because he knew that the Shadow Clan had pledged allegiance to the Sea King and was considered a force in the hands of the Sea Chives. This secret may not be known to the outside world, but it was already known to the players. At this moment, facing the powerful Tree Master, Aojian knew that he had no chance of defeating him, so he was somewhat nervous. As if sensing Aojian's nervousness, the Tree Master squeezed out a smile on his wrinkled face and waved his hand to wipe away his tears. "Can you tell me how you obtained the inheritance of the Sword Master?" In response to the Tree Master's question, Aojian replied after a moment of contemplation, "Actually, I have forgotten the specific process. I only vaguely remember that I entered a certain illusion and experienced many things, but I have forgotten all the details." When the venerable tree heard this, it nodded and had a hint of understanding in its heart. Although he had never practiced swordsmanship, he knew Amu very well. With just a few words, he understood how Aojian obtained the inheritance. However, at this moment, he was very puzzled as to why this memory would disappear. However, since it had disappeared, so be it. It was also in line with his wishes when he was alive. The Tree Master sighed in his heart. He knew that Amu's greatest regret when he was alive was that his sword will did not match his own attributes. Although he did not regret his choice, he did not let any disciple repeat his own path when he taught his disciples in the future. This was because he knew that if the beginning was wrong, then there would be many obstacles in the future, and there would be an end. Once, Amu was the strongest symbol in a certain era of the sea, but even so, he eventually reached the end and was surpassed by the Tree Master. Therefore, in the Tree Master's opinion, the disappearance of Aojian's memory must have been caused by Amu. This could be seen from the rule of Sword Will that Aojian had obtained. There was no trace of the sea god's Sword Will, and it had turned into the most original power of the rule of Sword Will. Was it not because Amu did not want anyone to repeat his own path? As for Aojian's refusal to return to the Central Sea area with him, the venerable tree did not continue to insist. "What is your relationship with the Shadow Clan?" As he spoke, the venerable tree pointed at the Shadow Clan warriors who were imprisoned by the fist in tent not far away. "They are my friend's subordinates. You'll protect them even at the cost of your life?" "Yes," Aojian answered without hesitation. "I understand." The venerable tree nodded indifferently, then turned to the deities of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. "Go back." Hearing this, the deities of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce present were surprised. The female emissary who had been following the venerable tree all this while spoke in shock. "Venerable tree, this. I'm afraid it's inappropriate. Perhaps the Shadow Clan posed a great threat to the Chamber of Commerce in the past, but the Shadow Clan is no longer a threat. Therefore, there is no need to exterminate them. Leave a way out." Hearing this, the Underworld Merchant Guild's deities fell silent. In the depths of their hearts, they were more willing to exterminate them and not leave behind any future troubles. However, they did not dare to disobey the orders of the venerable tree. The venerable tree was an extremely special existence in the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. Unlike other experts, he mostly did things his own way and did not act according to the orders of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. In the eyes of the members of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce, he was an expert who respected and cherished life. If it were not for the fact that the venerable sword was still in the Chamber of Commerce, he would have chosen to leave. However, cherishing life did not mean that he was afraid of fighting. In several battles, the venerable tree used his fists to prove himself. The legend of invincibility was created by his hands. Moreover, The venerable tree had an unpredictable character. He did not kill experts. Every expert who was defeated by him, even the ancient deities who were regarded as a great threat by the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce, would not be killed. Moreover, every time he defeated his opponent, he would leave behind a sentence. Life is precious, and it is even more precious to be able to cultivate to this level. Live on. He was such a strange expert, always elaborating on the preciousness of life in this world where life was like grass. It was precisely because of this that the status of the venerable tree in the entire Central Sea was extremely special. Even if some forces regarded the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce as their mortal enemy, they treated the venerable tree with respect. At this moment, although the deities of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce could see that the venerable tree wanted to let the Shadow Clan go, they did not dare to disobey. They immediately tore the space apart and chose to leave according to the venerable tree's orders. After the deities left, the venerable tree turned its gaze to Aojian. At this moment, in the eyes of the venerable tree, Aojian was the heir of Amu and also its junior. If he wanted to protect the Shadow Clan, he would not kill them. As for the higher-ups of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce, he would just ignore them. Do you know what happened to the venerable sword before he died? Can you tell me in detail? Hearing this, Aojian had a strange expression. Do you really want to know? The venerable tree nodded. I really want to know. Then don't hit me if I tell you, even though it has nothing to do with me. The venerable tree was puzzled, but it still said, just say it. Regarding the venerable tree who helped him protect the Shadow Clan, Aojian thought about it and decided to tell the truth. For some reason, he always felt that the venerable tree gave him a very close feeling, as if he was a family member, even though they had never met before. Then, Aojian told the venerable tree in detail about the underworld sword venerable's appearance in Baki and his disappearance with the venerable demonic ape. During this period, the venerable tree listened quietly, its expression neither happy nor sad. When Aojian's voice trailed off, several hours had passed. The sun set on the horizon, and the afterglow of dusk shone on the venerable tree's wrinkled face. Aojian suddenly felt the sadness in the venerable tree's heart. I knew that if he continued on this path, this day would eventually come, but I always thought that I could protect him. A touch of sadness appeared on the venerable tree's face. As it shook its head gently, tears welled up in its eyes. They had been companions for a lifetime. This journey had encountered many hardships, but they had all overcome it by supporting each other. But this time, he was not by his old friend's side. He did not even have the chance to see him for the last time. The venerable tree's heart was filled with shame, self-blame, and a strong reluctance to part. From now on, I will no longer have you as my companion. I didn't expect you to be a member of the player clan. But since Amu did not die in your hands, we have no enmity. You are Amu's heir, so you are my junior. I will not hurt you. The venerable tree smiled indifferently and reached out to pat Aojian's shoulder. At this moment, an abundant vitality was injected into Aojian's body. Game hint. Obtained life element. Converted to 9 million health points. Can be consumed in battle. It can help you instantly repair all wounds until the life element is exhausted or you suffer a fatal injury. Hearing the game hint, Aojian was stunned. Damn, isn't this life element the rejuvenation potion in the shop? However, in Aojian's opinion, the life element was much stronger than the potion in the shop. With the 9 million health points stored in his body, he felt that he was simply immortal. Looking at Aojian's shocked face, the venerable tree did not say anything. It turned around and tore open a crack in space. Where are you going? Aojian asked subconsciously. I'm looking for the venerable demonic ape to teach me a lesson. The venerable tree smiled and stepped into the crack in space. When the crack in space closed, Aojian was still in shock. At first, he thought that he would have to go through a tough battle. He had prepared the soul prayer wine and was ready to turn the world upside down. Even if he could not win, he had to spend money to exhaust his opponent. He did not expect it to end just like that. Moreover, the player's army was already on their way. It was just that he had arrived in advance by relying on the rule of sword intent. Thinking that the venerable tree was now looking for the venerable demonic ape, Ao Jian suddenly realized that a super battle was about to take place. After a moment of silence, Ao Jian posted his encounter here on the regional live chat channel. At this moment, the players who knew the news were just as confused as Ao Jian. That, Boss Ao Jian, didn't you go to die? Forgive me for being direct? How did you settle it? I now seriously suspect that Boss Ao Jian is a spy planted by the Underworld Chamber of Commerce in the player clan. I have the evidence. You can make the Underworld Chamber of Commerce depart just by showing your face? If I believed you, I would have wasted 3 years of playing. Ao Jian is definitely a spy, laughing emoji. Show your face? I now suspect that Ao Jian is following the hidden plot of subverting the player clan. Tell us the truth. Ao Jian, you have been targeted by us. Please cooperate with our investigation. Is there such a possibility? Didn't Ao Jian obtain the inheritance of the Underworld Sword Lord? Perhaps the hidden plot of the destruction of the player clan was activated at that time. The clever me has already seen the truth. Opening the chat box, Ao Jian was speechless as he looked at the ridiculous replies of the idiotic players. How can these idiots be so whimsical? It's infuriating. After closing the chat box, Ao Jian's eyes began to scan the surroundings because he had not seen the most important character, Si Leek, until now. At this moment, Ao Jian suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be that Si Leek has been cut off? Thinking of this, he could not help but shiver and quickly sent this speculation to the chat box. At this moment, the players collectively exploded. At this time, the Sea King naturally did not know that the players had exploded because of him. At this moment, he was entangled with a curse and felt weak all over. As the power of the curse spread in his body, it constantly destroyed his bodily functions. The Sea King tried to control the power of death to fight against it, but the curse of the goddess messenger was not afraid of the power of death at all. It raged in his body and destroyed everything along the way. In the face of a life and death crisis, the Sea King did not give up. He clenched his teeth and persevered. However, as time passed, he became weaker and his body became a mess. At this moment, even his consciousness became blurred. After persisting for a while, the Sea King finally chose to give up because he knew that he was definitely going to die. Struggling would be futile and useless. At this moment, the Sea King suddenly realized that his heart had become very calm. In the silent depths of the sea, his body was still sinking. At this moment, the Sea King's mind was replaying his life. From the Mu Te Sea nation, where the boy who would be jealous of Mu Zhiguang's excellence ran away from home. Establishing the Sea King Navy. Dominating the Void Ocean. Encountering the player clan. Obtaining the power of the Lord of Death. This life was very exciting, but the Sea King still felt that he had not lived enough. If I keep going, how far can I go? Can I overthrow the Underworld Chamber of Commerce and replace it? As his body dived deeper and deeper into the Sea King's consciousness was already blurred until there was not a trace of light around him. However, just as the Sea King's consciousness was about to fall into chaos, he suddenly felt a force pulling him upward. After a while, light appeared in front of him. The Sea King opened his eyes with difficulty and found that there was a white field in front of him. At the same time, he also found that there was a dog's head in front of him that was looking at him with a look of disgust. "Little brother, drink some milk. I think you're seriously ill." Chapter 7:16. Under Sun Chi's healing light, the Sea King's internal injuries gradually healed. However, what gave Sun Chi a headache was that he could not dispel the curse in the Sea King's body. After trying many methods, Sun Chi gave up. However, he also thought of a way to deal with the curse in the Sea King's body. Yi Sherwon was the one with the strongest curse ability among the players. After all, she had mastered the power of the curse law given by Azura. Therefore, Sun Chi shouted in the live chat channel and called Yi Sherwon to the mythical warship where he was. On the deck of the mythical warship, the Sea King's face was pale and he was relying on Sun Chi to sustain his life. As soon as he stopped healing, the curse in the Sea King's body would start to destroy again and eventually kill him. The bone-eroding curse made the Sea King feel even more tormented. Fortunately, Sun Chi still had Sun Chi. Thinking of this, the Sea King looked at Sun Chi with gratitude while Sun Chi looked back at him with disdain. After all, the two of them were already enemies. If it was not for the importance of Sea Chive's life, Sun Chi would not have worked so hard. At this time, Yi Sherwon came to the Sea King's side accompanied by Gu Yu. Looking at the feeble Sea King, Yi Sherwon scratched his head. He looked at Gu Yu and asked tentatively, "What should I do?" Gu Yu. Sun Chi. Sister, you have mastered the curse ability. Are you serious about asking us what to do? Sun Chi was speechless. Hearing this, Yi Sherwon was even more embarrassed. Although there was the power of the curse law of Azura in her body, she could not use her ability as skillfully as Ao Jian. Many curse abilities were still being explored. She could curse others, but she had never tried to dispel the curse of others. Rabbit, do you know how? Thinking of this, Yi Sherwon cast an expectant look at Rabbit. No, I'm just a rabbit. I don't know anything. Rabbit replied immediately. I think you can. After all, you're a medicine-making rabbit. Forget it. Have you ever seen a rabbit with medical skills? Rabbit shook his head to show that he really did not know how. At this moment, Gu Yu and Sun Chi's expressions were very interesting. Sea Chives, you're finished. Do you have any last words? Sun Chi sighed and patted the Sea King's shoulder with a look of pity. The Sea King rolled his eyes at Sun Chi with a pained expression. I want to eat dog meat before I die. Upon hearing this, the dog suddenly stopped feeding, causing the Sea King to let out a blood-curdling scream. Stop fooling around. Gu Yu glared at the dog. Hearing his boss words, Sun Chi couldn't help but pout. He immediately gave the Sea King the light of life. Yi Sherwon, think about it again. Try everything you can, just use whatever methods you have. Gu Yu turned his head and looked at Yi Sherwon with a solemn expression. Upon hearing this, the Sea King could not help but roll his eyes again. As expected of a player clan so wild. I'm going to die, can't you be more serious? Looking at the Sea King's pained face, Yi Sherwon began to rack his brains. After a while, Yi Sherwon raised his eyebrows and said to the Sea King with a joyful expression, Your curse is gone. As soon as he said that, everyone immediately looked at Yi Sherwon with bright eyes, and the atmosphere became very heavy for a moment. However, the curse sigil that Yi Sherwon had been waiting for did not appear. The Sea King was still in a miserable state. What you've mastered is the application of negative curses. You can't dispel curses that have already been formed by others. This method won't work. Qi Ming shook his head and sighed. Upon hearing this, Yi Sherwon scratched his head awkwardly. By the way, can I use curses to fight curses? Sun Chi raised his paw and patted the ground as he asked excitedly. We can try. Qi Ming nodded. Little sister, try it. Don't be afraid, I'll extend his life. You can curse however you want. Sun Chi turned around and said to Yi Sherwon. Yi Sherwon nodded immediately. After taking a deep breath, she shouted at the Sea King, Turn into a pig! This time, the cursed sigil appeared and pierced into the Sea King's body. However, it was destroyed by the purple shadow before it could take shape. It was not effective at all. Upon seeing this, the anticipation on everyone's faces dissipated. My strength and realm are not enough to curse a ghost emperor realm Sea Leak, Yi Sherwon said dejectedly. Upon hearing this, Sun Chi patted the Sea King's shoulder sadly. Sea Leak, although I don't like you, I still don't want you to die. However, you're really done for this time. There's no saving you. Don't touch me, the Sea King shouted weakly. I remember when you were fighting with the demonic ape clan, didn't you curse a ghost emperor realm demonic ape? How did you do that? At this time, Guyu looked at Yi Sherwen curiously and asked. Oh, that's because the demonic ape was in a near-death state. It was very weak, so it couldn't resist the power of my curse. Yi Sherwen immediately answered with a serious face. Upon hearing this, Guyu, Sun Qi, and the others looked at the Sea King with a strange expression. Cough cough. I think I've found a way. Sun Qi grinned, revealing his white teeth. Sun Qi, stop the milk, Guyu said. Okay. Sun Qi immediately stopped the release of the healing light. At this moment, the Sea King let out another blood-curdling scream. His pale face turned gray. How old are you? Why are you screaming at the slightest bit of pain? Can't you be more strong-willed? Sun Qi said with disdain as he looked at the Sea King who was wailing. Upon hearing this, the Sea King only wanted to say, I'm really King White Magic Dog. However, his body that was shrinking could only let out a blood-curdling scream. After a while, the Sea King stopped screaming. His face turned completely gray, and his consciousness became blurry under the erosion of the power of the curse. Meanwhile, Guyu and the others opened the analysis menu and observed the Sea King's physical condition. While waiting, the description of the Sea King's status panel appeared, near death. At this moment, Guyu immediately looked at Yi Sherwen and said, Do it? Turn into a pig. Yi Sherwen immediately looked at the Sea King and launched the curse. As the curse runes appeared, they condensed into a seal in front of Yi Sherwen and pierced into the Sea King's body again. At this moment, the Sea King suddenly turned into a white, fat pig in everyone's eyes. Seeing this scene, everyone was delighted. However, before they could rejoice for long, a purple mist emerged from the Sea King's body and dispelled Yi Sherwen's curse, allowing the Sea King to return to his original state. What's going on? Sun Qi asked in shock. My curse isn't as strong as this one. It's been dispelled. Yi Sherwen replied with a solemn expression. That's easy to solve. Continue to cast the curse and slowly erase this god's seal curse. Qi Ming immediately said. Hearing this, Yi Sherwen nodded heavily and shouted the pig transformation curse at the Sea King. Then, under the gaze of Guyu and the others, the Sea King turned into a pig for a while and returned to his original state the next moment. At this moment, Guyu, Qi Ming, and the others' faces turned red, but they still held back their laughter. Sun Qi was the only one who held his stomach and rolled on the ground, laughing out loud. He did not care about the Sea King at all. However, one had to admit that this god's seal curse was terrifying. After turning into a pig for more than 10 times, although the purple mist had faded, it still stubbornly wrapped around the Sea King's body and showed no signs of dispersing. During this period, Sun Qi would extend the Sea King's life from time to prevent the Sea King from suddenly dying in a state of near death. The one who suffered the most was the Sea King. At this moment, he was on the verge of a mental breakdown. It's fine if you want to heal me, but this is too much. I've never felt so aggrieved in my life. Although he knew that the player clan was healing him, this method was too humiliating for the Sea King. However, what the Sea King did not know was that Sun Qi was even worse than he thought. While he was turning into a pig, he kept taking pictures and was prepared to send them to the forum to make stickers. Time passed in this way. As the purple curse mist was continuously erased, the duration of the pig transformation was prolonged. At this moment, Guyu and the others finally breathed a sigh of relief. They knew that the Sea King's life was saved. After casting the curse for more than 10 times, under the expectant gaze of Guyu and the others, the purple mist dissipated. It was completely defeated by Yi Sherwen's continuous attack of curses. At this moment, Sun Qi decisively followed up with the healing light and began to heal the Sea King's injuries. Without the curse, Sun Qi's healing became extremely smooth. In less than 10 minutes, the Sea King's internal injuries were erased. Apart from the mental damage caused by the god's seal curse, which caused the Sea King to be a little dispirited, he was considered to be completely healed. However, even though his injuries were healed, the Sea King was still lying on the ground with a numb expression. I've been turned into a pig 478 times. 478 times. F***ck this white magic dog. I don't care about my reputation. At this moment, the Sea King felt very embarrassed, especially in front of the idiotic player clan. It was really unbearable. Little brother, I've healed you. Do you want to thank me? Sun Chi came to the Sea King's side and patted him on the shoulder. Don't touch me, you stupid dog. I shouldn't have saved you, you ungrateful chive. Stupid dog, get lost. Looking at Sun Chi and the Sea King who despised each other, Gu Yu and Chi Ming looked at each other and smiled. When they received the news that the Sea King was in a life-and-death crisis, and the crisis came from the Acheron Merchant Guild, they were shocked. Although the players were not afraid of the Acheron Merchant Guild, they clearly knew how terrifying the Acheron Merchant Guild was. It was definitely not something that the Sea King could fight against. Moreover, due to the long journey in the devouring ocean, there was nothing they could do even if they were anxious. They could only hurry on with their journey. Fortunately, the Sea King came to the Kuelong Ocean and met Ao Jian, who was preparing to cross the Kuelong Ocean and head to the devouring ocean for support. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. The Sea King would probably lose his life. A white and tender chive that they had been raising for more than 3 years would probably die just like that. Now that the Sea King was healed, they were relieved. Thinking of this, Gu Yu posted the news of the Sea King's recovery on the forum. At this moment, the players below the post cheered. Although they did not come to the scene, the forum was already discussing the Sea King being cursed by the god's seal. They were also worried if the Sea King could survive. Now that they heard the news of the Sea King's recovery, the players were relieved, knowing that their chive was saved. On the deck of the mythical battleship, the dispirited Sea King rested for a while. Suddenly, he took a deep breath and looked at Gu Yu with a solemn expression. I've decided. Gu Yu was stunned when he heard it. Chive, what's your decision? I've been expelled from the Acheron Merchant Guild and have nowhere to go. Therefore, I've decided to join the player clan and become a part of you, just like the Illusion Fish clan. Hearing this, Gu Yu and the others were dumbfounded. Look, is this what a chive would say? Why doesn't he know what he's talking about? Besides, compared to the Illusion Fish clan, what's the difference between you and a salted fish? You're not motivated at all. Thinking of this, Gu Yu and Mo Lingfeng looked at each other and immediately took 2 steps forward. Under the Sea King's astonished gaze, they lifted him up and threw him into the water. As a mature chive, you should grow on your own. How can you be a flower in a greenhouse? Let's go. The Sea King who was thrown into the water? Holding back the curse in his heart, he felt terrible. Chapter 7:17. Gu Yu and the others decisively rejected the Sea King's offer to join them. There was no room for negotiation. Mature leeks should go out and make a name for themselves. Staying in the mansion of the dead would only make them more and more dispirited and unmotivated. This could be seen from Tong Gua and the others. Ever since they joined the Baiki camp, there were no more life-threatening crises. The cruel rules of survival in the underworld had nothing to do with them. Such a life was comfortable, but it would also make people lose their fighting spirit. Gu Yu and the others could not imagine the Sea King, who was always full of fighting spirit and wanted to dominate the underworld sea, playing cards and drinking with Tong Gua and the others every day. By then, the Sea King would probably be crippled. Therefore, in order to preserve the Sea King's fighting spirit, Gu Yu and the others threw him into the sea without hesitation. They gave him freedom and would never give him an inch of land. At this moment, the Sea King was undoubtedly dumbfounded. In fact, he had always wondered why the players treated him so well and helped him every time he was in danger. The Sea King's speculations all pointed to one thing: The player clan wanted to recruit him and make him work for them. However, this was a joke to the Sea King at that time. Even if I die in the sea, I will never work for the player clan. However, after going through so much together, some things would change. The Sea King realized that the player clan treated him with sincerity. Therefore, the idea of never joining the player clan was gradually shaken in the following days. However, the Sea King still had his own forces at that time. First, it was the Mu-Te-Si nation, and then the War Chamber of Commerce. This was also the reason why he did not take that step. However, at this moment, his hope of rising by relying on the Underworld Merchant Guild had disappeared along with the guild. Therefore, at this moment, the Sea King once again wondered if he should join the player clan. However, this time, the Sea King and the other players had saved his life, making the Sea King's idea of joining the player clan take root. After struggling for a while, the Sea King finally said that sentence. "I've decided to join the player clan." In the Sea King's opinion, these words would definitely make Gu Yu and the others beam with joy. After all, having him was equivalent to having the entire Mu-Te-Si nation and the Shadow Clan. However, after hearing these words, the smiles on Gu Yu and the others' faces froze, revealing a look of resentment. Without another word, he threw him into the sea. At this moment, the Sea King's face was full of question marks as he looked at the mythical warship that was sailing into the distance. Damn it, did this bunch of idiots go crazy again? Looking at the faraway mythical battleship, Sun Wukong raised his middle finger at him. At this moment, the Sea King could not help but curse in his heart. If you don't want to join, then don't join. Just you wait. When I become strong, even if you beg me, I won't give you such a chance. The river flows east for 30 years, and the river flows west for 30 years. Don't bully me just because I'm poor. If you treat me so horribly, there will be a time when you beg me for help. Infuriating this king to death. On the other side, the players knew that the Sea King was safe. The players did not hesitate to chase away the troops of the Mu-Te-Si nation stationed at the Liuli coast. At this moment, He Sui was dumbfounded. He could not understand why the player clan, who had allowed them to camp here, would suddenly turn against them. Hence, he immediately asked the nearby player clansmen to find out the reason. The reason given by the players was simple. Your boss is safe now. Hurry up and go find him. It's time to start a new journey. Knowing that the Sea King was safe, He Sui and the others were undoubtedly very happy. However, they were puzzled as to why the player clan urged them to become stronger. They felt that something was wrong. Especially the expectant gaze of the player clan. It was very similar to when they reared their spiritual beasts and hoped that their spiritual beasts would grow fat quickly. Although they could not understand, He Sui and the others still started to leave the Liuli coast dejectedly. However, before they left, the players handed over half of the resources that they had obtained when they colluded in the Devouring Sea previously to He Sui and the others according to their agreement. At this moment, He Sui and the other lords were very touched. In this underworld where the law of survival was cruel, not only did the player clan not take advantage of their weakness to attack them, but they also fulfilled their promise. They were indeed a clear stream in the underworld. In the end, under the impatient gazes of the players, He Sui led his clansmen to move away from the Liuli coast completely. They headed towards the Kuelong Ocean, ready to look for their boss who was already safe. As for the future, they were also very confused. Moreover, at this moment they had an idea that they decided to discuss with the Sea King. And that was to join the player clan. After weighing the pros and cons, He Sui and the others knew that they were very unsafe at this stage. They had completely offended the Underworld Chamber of Commerce, and it would be extremely difficult to survive in this sea. Other than the Underworld Chamber of Commerce, those forces that wanted to curry favor with the Underworld Chamber of Commerce might also secretly attack them. It could be said that they would be enemies wherever they went after offending the Underworld Chamber of Commerce. Hence, in their opinion, Bakey, where the player clan was located, was the only place where they could settle down. At least for now, the Underworld Chamber of Commerce would not attack the player clan of Bakey. With such a feeling, Hei Sui and the others crossed the border of the Void Ocean and arrived at the Kuelong Ocean. Following the hints given by the player clan, they searched around and finally found the Sea King, who was together with the Shadow Clan warriors. Seeing that the Sea King was safe and sound as the player clan had said, Hei Sui and the others were very relieved. They immediately went forward and met up with him. After some conversation, Hei Sui mustered up his courage and represented all the lords to tell the Sea King of their intention to join the player clan. At that moment, the Sea King's reaction caught Hei Sui and the others off guard. The Sea King, who was initially indifferent, suddenly looked angry. He raised his palm and slapped the back of Hei Sui's head. "Can't you have some backbone? Are you discouraged by a little setback? How many benefits did the player clan give you? If you like the player clan so much, why don't you join them? Can't you be stronger like me? See if I don't beat you to death, for having such thoughts, After a series of slaps, Sha Shui and the others were dumbfounded. Looking at Hei Sui, who was squatting down with his hands on his head, they shivered and felt lucky that they were not the ones who said those words. Otherwise, they would be the ones getting beaten up. At that moment, Hei Sui felt extremely wronged. Because he felt that he did not say anything wrong. The player clan had given them so much help, it was understandable for him to join them. Like a stubborn donkey, heartless, ungrateful, scumbag of course, Hei Sui did not dare to say those words out loud. Instead, he lay down and curled his body to reduce the surface area of his injuries. After Hei Sui and the others left with the Mu Te army, another hot topic exploded in the forum. According to Ao Jian, a super battle was about to take place in the second precinct of the Naraka realm. The Acheron Merchant Guild's Venerable Tree was about to fight with the Venerable Demonic Ape. At that moment, a large number of players were heading to the second precinct through the newly built teleportation point, ready to watch the epic battle. At the same time, the players in the forum were discussing fervently, guessing who would win the battle. There was even a round of voting for it. Of course, there were also players from Cruel Malevolence who initiated a bet from the final outcome. It could be seen that the majority of the players favored the Venerable Demonic Ape, who could fight against opponents of a higher level. As for the outcome, the players could not wait to verify their guesses at the scene. Chapter 7:18. While the players were comparing the combat power of the Venerable Tree and the Venerable Demonic Ape, the Venerable Tree had already crossed the spatial tunnel and arrived at the Naraka realm. Since he did not know the coordinates of the second realm of the Naraka realm, nor did he have a teleportation portal for the players, he wandered in the Naraka realm, looking for a way to go to the second realm. After some exploration, he roughly grasped the structure of the 18 levels of the Naraka realm and finally tore the space apart to arrive at the second realm. The moment the Venerable Tree appeared, the Venerable Demonic Ape, who was cultivating, sensed the sudden appearance of a majestic life force. He looked to the west, trying to determine the exact location of the aura. In his senses, the majestic life force was rapidly approaching from the west. When the Venerable Demonic Ape opened his eyes, he found a frail-looking old man standing in the air in front of him. "Who are you? Why are you looking for me?" the Venerable Demonic Ape asked with a grin, not panicking at all. "I'm from the Central Sea of the Netherworld. Outsiders call me the Venerable Tree." The Venerable Tree replied indifferently. "You're from the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce. Seems like you're here to seek revenge for that swordsman, right?" Upon hearing the Venerable Tree say that he came from the Central Sea of the Netherworld, the Venerable Demonic Ape suddenly thought of the ancient god he had killed. The Venerable Tree did not answer but looked at the Venerable Demonic Ape. "Can you enlighten me? Since you want to die too, I'll fulfill your wish." The Venerable Demonic Ape replied with a sinister smile. In his opinion, the Venerable Tree was here to seek revenge. In that case, there was no need to talk too much. He would just kill it. Thinking of this, the venerable demonic ape waved his hand downward, and the black iron rod that was stuck in the ground not far away suddenly trembled and floated into the air. The venerable demonic ape then held it in his hand. "Wait. What now?" the venerable demonic ape asked with a frown. "Before we begin, let your people leave first. Don't let them be affected by the battle." Upon hearing this, the venerable demonic ape had a strange expression. He could not understand why the venerable tree, who was here to seek revenge, would have such thoughts. After snorting coldly, the venerable demonic ape shook his body, and countless demonic apes fell down like raindrops. Immediately, the venerable demonic ape waved his hand again, tearing a space apart and enveloping all the demonic ape. After doing all that, the venerable devil ape looked at the venerable tree with a provocative look on his face. The venerable tree didn't say anything. He clenched his fists, and suddenly, the laws of fist intent surged. Law runes wrapped around his right hand, and the majestic vitality that was released shocked even the venerable demonic ape. The battle broke out at this moment. The first to make a move was the reverend devil ape. The black iron rod suddenly transformed into thousands of shadows and smashed toward the venerable tree. At this time, the venerable tree was as small as an ant in front of this giant black stick, but when he waved his right fist, the world turned gray again, as if all the vitality around him was sucked away by his right fist. When the fist collided with the paragon demonic ape's clear air rod, violent winds howled and the sound of space being torn rang out continuously. The sinister smile on the venerable devil ape's face disappeared at this moment. That was because he realized that the venerable tree's strength was not weaker than his, and was even a little stronger. This was the first time the venerable devil ape had encountered such a powerful opponent after becoming an ancient god. Even the corpse goddess couldn't compete with him in terms of strength. He couldn't imagine how that stooped body could contain such terrifying power. Roar! At this moment, the venerable devil ape also became serious. As he roared, all the muscles in his body tightened, and all his strength was poured into the clear air rod, trying to suppress the venerable tree. This time, he gained the advantage in strength and slowly pushed the venerable tree to the ground. However, his advantage didn't last for a moment. The venerable tree suddenly stretched out his left hand, clenched his fist, and smashed it on the clear air rod. Both fists struck at the same time, and the terrifying power directly sent the venerable devil ape flying, causing him to fall hard to the ground. The defeat in the confrontation completely angered the venerable devil ape. His figure suddenly disappeared on the spot, and then appeared next to the venerable tree. The clear air rod swept down again. At this moment, along with the attack of the venerable devil ape, nomological lines suddenly appeared on the clear air rod. Boom! The fist and the iron rod collided again. Violent energy ripples spread in all directions. Under this blow, the space shattered and fell like glass, unable to be repaired for a long time. It seemed to be suppressed by this force. The venerable tree was also smashed into the depths of the ground by this blow. The venerable devil ape didn't wait for the venerable tree to get up. He raised the clear air rod and slammed it into the ground. Suddenly, the nearby mountains and rivers shattered, and the violent force blasted a deep pit with a diameter of 3,000 meters on the ground. At this moment, the venerable devil ape locked onto the aura that belonged to the venerable tree coming from underground. The clear air rod struck out again, piercing the ground and heading straight for the venerable tree. Boom! The entire second realm of the Naraka realm trembled under this blow. It was as if the earth couldn't withstand such a huge force and would collapse at any time. At this moment, a figure suddenly broke through the shackles of the earth and appeared beside the venerable devil ape. The withered right arm suddenly waved toward his cheek. The power of the laws of the fist gathered, and the punch was like a cannonball, instantly erupting with a power that the venerable devil ape couldn't resist, blasting him away. At this moment, the venerable devil ape's heart was filled with horror. He had clearly taken 2 blows from me, so why does he still have the strength to fight? His body created a ditch on the ground, and he only stopped after sliding for a few thousand meters. Feeling the pain on his right cheek, the venerable devil ape clenched the clear air rod in his hand. Suddenly, a familiar power surged into his body, and the injury on his cheek was completely healed in the blink of an eye. He then turned his head to look at the venerable tree in the distance, and immediately realized that the venerable tree looked miserable and wasn't completely unharmed. Seeing this scene, the venerable devil ape's lips curled into a sinister smile again. It was impossible for him to lose in a battle of attrition. As long as he couldn't be killed in one blow, he wouldn't be defeated. Thinking of this, the divine seal between the venerable devil ape's eyebrows flashed, and his body began to shrink. In the blink of an eye, he became as small as the venerable tree, and the clear air rod in his hand also shrank. After taking a deep breath, the venerable devil ape suddenly disappeared on the spot, and when he reappeared, he was already behind the venerable tree. The surging power of the laws of the clear air rod pierced through the space and headed straight for the back of the venerable tree. The venerable tree sensed it and immediately turned around, using his right fist to meet it. Boom! 2 violent air currents blew to both sides. Ha ha ha, great! The venerable devil ape laughed loudly, and his left hand suddenly grabbed the venerable tree's neck. At this moment, the divine seal on the venerable tree's forehead also lit up. His left fist was surrounded by laws, and he suddenly smashed it towards the venerable devil ape's left hand. This blow was like a comet hitting the earth, making the venerable devil ape feel an unparalleled power. The wind from the fist hit him, causing his skin to hurt. Crack! In the venerable devil ape's disbelief, his left hand was actually fractured by a single punch. This time, the venerable tree didn't give him another chance. He retracted his left hand and once again punched the venerable devil ape's chest, smashing him to the ground. This punch caused the venerable devil ape's chest to cave in, and he was in a trance. He vaguely saw a tiger burning with green flames roaring in the thin body. At this moment, although the venerable devil ape was injured, this injury was not a problem at all. He immediately clenched the clear air rod in his hand, and in the blink of an eye, his injury recovered to its original state, and he returned to his peak state. After recovering, the venerable devil ape pounced on the venerable tree again without hesitation. You may be strong, but I will never lose. This was the truth. The venerable devil ape had fought with countless experts in his life. Even if he was defeated time and time again, he would always win in the end with his unlimited recovery ability. The venerable tree was different. He had also fought with countless ancient god realm experts in the central sea of the Yellow Spring, but he had never lost. Facing such a powerful venerable tree, the venerable devil ape changed his battle strategy this time. Although he was brutal, he was not stupid. He knew that he was no match for the venerable tree in a head-on fight, and he had to use special methods. And there was only one special method he could think of: exchange injury for injury. Once again, they clashed head-on. This time, when the venerable devil ape attacked, he no longer blocked the venerable tree's attack. Instead, he took the initiative to take the heavy punch and hit the venerable tree with the rod. After a short confrontation, the venerable devil ape suffered countless heavy punches. His body was twisted and deformed, and many of his bones were broken. The venerable tree was equally miserable. His clothes had long been turned to dust, and his bony body was full of rod marks. His skin had been smashed by the clear air rod, and blood was flowing. Ha ha ha! Seeing this scene, the venerable devil ape laughed maniacally. He gripped the clear air rod tightly, and suddenly, a warm current flowed into his body. His injuries quickly healed, and in the blink of an eye, he had recovered to his peak. The venerable tree did not say a word. He raised his right fist and clenched it hard. Suddenly, vitality surged out of his body and filled his body. Under the venerable devil ape's incredulous gaze, the injuries on the venerable tree's body quickly healed, and the speed was not much slower than his. At this moment, the venerable devil ape was completely stunned. He was able to heal his injuries in a short period of time by relying on the iron rod in his hand. On the other hand, the venerable tree did not consume any spiritual materials, nor did he carry any equipment. He could actually do this with just his physical body. This really frightened the venerable devil ape. At this moment, the venerable devil ape could not help but ask, "How did you do it? I just want to live." The venerable tree smiled indifferently. Again. Hearing this, the venerable devil ape, who did not believe in heresy, stepped forward again and chose to exchange injuries with the venerable tree. The battle between the two began again. During the battle, the ground seemed to be collapsing and could not bear the burden. The space was constantly breaking and healing, creating a space countercurrent vortex that tore everything around it. If not for the fact that the space of the Naraka realm was extremely special and was formed by the body of Ksitigarbha, it would have definitely collapsed in the battle. At this moment, the gods of the entire Naraka realm were alarmed. They turned their heads to look at the battle, and their gazes penetrated the barrier of the realm and came to the second realm to watch the battle. At this time, the players who came to watch the battle also entered the second realm. However, the moment they stepped into the second realm, they were stunned by the scene in front of them. The scene in front of them seemed to be the end of the world. Mountains and rivers collapsed, vegetation withered, and there was a space countercurrent in the sky from time to time. Many players even thought that they had come to the wrong place. After realizing that the battle between the venerable devil ape and the venerable tree had already begun, the players immediately began to move forward. There were dangers everywhere along the way, and they would be torn to pieces by the space countercurrent if they were not careful. However, for the sake of watching the battle, the players used their fearless spirit and avoided the space countercurrent all the way. They used their actions to show what it meant to be an iron-headed kid, advancing under the threat of death. The players in the media circle of the forum even raised money to buy the soul-blessing wine in order to rush to report the battle live as soon as possible. After drinking the wine, they ran for their lives, using their lives to seize a chance. At the same time, Lu Wu was also paying attention to the battle between the venerable tree and the venerable devil ape. This time, the combat power of the venerable tree was also shocking to Lu Wu. The cultivation of the physical body to such a level was so terrifying that it was comparable to when he was using a cheat. Chapter 719. Although the players had arrived at the second region of the Naraka realm, they still needed to be strong enough to watch a battle between ancient gods. Even if there were ghost kings among the players, they could only complain in the face of such a violent battle. Especially when they got closer, the potions in the shop could not be stopped at all. Once they stopped, they would die. However, there were still players who were not afraid of death. In order to get on the livestream headlines, they started filming the battle between the two. Hard work always paid off. When a livestream of the battle appeared, the players who could not get close to the battlefield swarmed into it. Along with the praises of the original poster is a good person, and the screen full of rewards of 1 soul coin, everything became worth it. The first to eat crabs always reaped the most reward. Before the livestream player died, the other livestream rooms that were open later would obviously have fewer players watching. At this time, the physical collision between the venerable devil ape and the tree venerable was still ongoing. Both of them cultivated their physical bodies, but in terms of physical strength, it was obvious that the tree venerable was much stronger. On the other hand, the venerable devil ape's strongest recovery ability did not have any advantage against the infinite vitality of the tree venerable. However, it was impossible to tell who the final winner would be at this time. That was because the injuries of both of them would recover in the blink of an eye. What surprised the players the most was the combat power that the seemingly thin and weak body of the tree venerable unleashed. The venerable devil ape could be said to be the underworld creature with the highest combat power that the players had encountered at this stage. However, at this moment it was being suppressed by the tree venerable. There were even sharp-eyed players in the livestream room who took a screenshot of the moment the tree venerable attacked and then zoomed in on the green light on the surface of the tree venerable's fist. Then, they were surprised to find that there was an island inside the green light. After zooming in, they found that there was a forest inside with many vivid images of animals and plants. In the center of the island, there was a tiger that was burning with green flames and exuding vitality. When the player uploaded the screenshot to the livestream room, it aroused the player's exclamations of surprise. F***ck, there's an island hidden on the tree venerable's fist. No wonder it's so heavy. Anyway, I feel pain just by looking at the venerable devil ape. The tree venerable should have won this battle. The venerable devil ape is obviously in a very passive state. Looks like I'm right, Happy. What I want to say is, these details are too detailed. If it wasn't for the player who took the screenshot zooming in out of boredom, who would have discovered it? My great war is indeed invincible. What do you mean by details? These are F***king details. Dog official, there isn't a single game in the world that I can play, it's so lonely, laughing emoji. From the miniature island on the tree venerable's fist, the players quickly changed the topic to the lousy official was awesome. However, as the battle became more intense, the players shifted their attention back to the live broadcast. In this battle, the venerable tree and the venerable devil ape seemed to have turned on an invincible cheat. The venerable tree had even sent the venerable demonic ape into a state of near death several times, but in the blink of an eye, the venerable demonic ape had recovered and continued to fight. It was the same for the venerable tree. His recovery was entirely driven by the endless life force contained in his body. This was the venerable tree's will to survive. Every time death approached, his body would resist death and stubbornly choose to continue living. At the same time, it gave the venerable tree infinite motivation. Under the constant pressure of the venerable tree's injuries, his body glowed at this moment. His strength had begun to grow. The body that refused to die began to squeeze out its own potential, continuously supplying power to the venerable tree. The venerable devil ape soon discovered this. In terms of speed and strength, the venerable tree was already stronger than him. However, as the battle went on, the venerable tree improved at a speed visible to the naked eye. Boom! The heavy punch landed again, and this punch directly blew the venerable devil ape's left arm into a bloody mist. Roar! The venerable devil ape immediately let out a roar. At this time, the power of the Tai Ching rod instantly locked onto the venerable devil ape's scattered flesh and suddenly contracted, turning into the venerable devil ape's left arm again. The battle continued. From the initial suppression to the current complete suppression, it was the first time the venerable devil ape had encountered such a powerful opponent. In the past battles, he had always been the one who became stronger and stronger. There was even a legend of him breaking through to the divine state in battle. However, at this moment, he was shocked by the venerable tree. It was as if the venerable tree's body had no limits. Every time it was squeezed, not only did it not collapse, but it would also give more power to the venerable tree. During the battle, the venerable tree's body gradually filled up from its shriveled state. Its originally dull skin gradually gained luster, and waves of the law of life that were visible to the naked eye emanated from its body. Go to hell! Seeing this scene, the venerable devil ape had already noticed that the venerable tree seemed to be breaking through. He immediately swung the iron rod, wanting to stop it. Boom! The iron rod hit the venerable tree's right shoulder firmly. However, this time, the venerable tree did not move at all, as if it was not affected at all. Roar! The indignant venerable devil ape unleashed all his strength and swung the iron rod again. At this time, the black rust on the Tai Ching rod fell off, revealing a trace of greenish-silver body. As the rod fell, the space of the second realm shook, and the venerable tree was instantly smashed in half. After the two halves of the body were separated, they exploded with a loud bang. Seeing this scene, the players in the livestream were in an uproar. Initially, the players thought that the venerable tree had already secured the victory. After all, the more he fought, the stronger he became. No matter how they looked at it, the venerable tree would win the final victory. However, they did not expect the venerable devil ape to suddenly explode and turn the seemingly invincible venerable tree into a bloody mist. After killing the venerable tree, the venerable devil ape did not stop. He opened his mouth and sucked hard, wanting to suck the bloody mist into his mouth. At this moment, an unexpected scene happened. The bloody mist in the sky was not under his control at all. It suddenly condensed together and rebuilt the venerable tree's body in the blink of an eye. This time, the venerable tree behind the rebuilt body looked very young. He had thin lips, sword-like eyebrows, and a few strands of black hair that fell from his temples. The side profile of his handsome face was perfect and impeccable. F***ck, an old man turned into a handsome young man. Could this be the long-lost return, my Pia rod? I've been ugly since I was young. I suddenly want to go up and get hit. This plastic surgery is too King heaven-defying. This rod directly made the venerable tree delete his account and remake his face. Amazing. Society, venerable devil ape, grumpy online plastic surgery. He can go to the mansion of the dead to do business, laughing emoji. If he went to the mansion of the dead to open a plastic surgery shop, this rod would at least charge 2,000 soul coins, laughing emoji. The chat gradually became more and more idiotic. However, the players were stunned by the scene in front of them. Just when they thought that the venerable tree would definitely win, the venerable devil ape suddenly killed the venerable tree. However, just when they thought that the battle was over, the venerable tree resurrected on the spot. Up until now, the players had enjoyed watching the battle. Even the special effects in movies were not as exciting as this. At the same time, all the players had the same thought in their minds. If only they were so King powerful. Upon witnessing this scene, the venerable demonic ape was also dumbfounded. His unlimited recovery ability came from the iron rod, but it was not without weaknesses. It could not deal with fatal injuries. However, the venerable tree, who only relied on his physical body, did not have such a weakness. The venerable devil ape saw what true indestructibility was on the spot. Even so, the venerable devil ape did not admit defeat. From the moment he forged the heart of a powerhouse, there was no such thing as defeat in his heart. The Tai Ching rod suddenly glowed like a green thunderbolt, heading straight for the venerable tree's face. Bang! There was a muffled sound. This time, the venerable tree only used his right hand to block the blow and firmly grabbed the Tai Ching rod in the venerable devil ape's hand. Then, his left fist slammed into the iron rod. The venerable devil ape immediately felt a majestic force coming from the other end of the iron rod, and his hands were numb from the shock. However, he still held the iron rod firmly. Bang! Another punch caused the venerable devil ape's palm to crack, and blood splattered everywhere. Bang! 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 Seeing this scene, the venerable tree continued to punch. Fist shadows appeared all over the sky, and all of them hit the Tai Ching rod. This time, the venerable devil ape finally could not hold on to the iron rod anymore. He was sent flying by this powerful force and fell heavily to the ground. Although it was out of the venerable devil ape's grasp, the Tai Ching rod was still trembling, as if it wanted to break free from the venerable tree's control. This time, the venerable tree let go of the iron rod, and then punched with both fists at the same time. The law of fist intent appeared, and as the fist shadows swayed, a huge island appeared on the sea. It slammed into the iron rod and smashed it deep into the ground. Then, a ferocious tiger with green flames on its body pounced out of the island and fell to the ground. Roar! As the ferocious tiger roared, its claws tore the ground and pounced on the Tai Ching rod deep underground, imprisoning it firmly underground. At this point, the battle seemed to be over. The venerable tree slowly landed in front of the venerable devil ape and raised his right fist. This time, the venerable devil ape did not have the help of the Tai Ching rod, and the outcome seemed to be decided. Looking at the expressionless venerable tree in front of him, the venerable devil ape smiled bitterly. "You've won, your revenge has been successful." The venerable tree did not say anything, and suddenly punched at the venerable devil ape. At this moment, the venerable devil ape closed his eyes, but the pain he imagined did not appear. When he opened his eyes again, he found that the venerable tree's fist had stopped in front of his face. "Why didn't you kill me?" At this moment, the venerable devil ape suddenly felt very angry, because he saw a trace of pity in the venerable tree's eyes. The venerable tree said slowly, "Living is difficult, and cultivating to this point is even more difficult. Isn't it better to continue living? Bulsh *t, it is the truth that the strong control the lives of the weak. You are stronger than me, so you can control my life." The venerable devil ape immediately rebuked. At this time, what the venerable devil ape said was exactly what he had experienced. Just like how the Corpse Clan controlled the lives of the Devil Ape Clan, the strong could enslave the weak. When he was strong enough, the lives of the members of the Corpse Clan were just playthings under his control. Strong? Do you know the definition of a strong person? The venerable tree shook his head and sighed. Freedom. As long as I can control myself and others, I am strong. It's a very domineering way of putting it, but you're wrong. A strong person should consider everything around him from the perspective of the strong. A real strong person will look at the development of the entire underworld from the perspective of the underworld, and not be competitive in a corner and dominate an area, such as our great emperor. After a pause, the venerable tree continued to speak. And you said freedom, but where is your freedom? Think about it carefully, you just came from one prison to another. It's just that this prison seems invisible, but it makes you feel like you've gained freedom. Hearing this, the venerable devil ape was puzzled. At this time, the venerable tree continued to speak. If I'm not wrong, that stick has controlled you. Maybe it can bring you power, but is this considered freedom? Compared to the strong person who could control your life back then, what's the difference in essence? This is the other prison that I'm talking about, but it seems invisible. Venerable Tree's words made the venerable devil ape's heart skip a beat. Chapter 720. The venerable tree's words made the venerable devil ape fall into deep thought. Because he thought of his past with the clear chi rod. In the past, the clear chi rod was his spiritual support, and even more so, his life's faith. Relying on the clear chi rod, he broke away from the control of the corpse race, and established his own forces. At that time, the venerable devil ape thought that his strength was enough for him to be completely free. However, he had never considered whether this clear chi rod was another new cage. At this moment, the venerable tree's words made the venerable devil ape start to think about a question. Was he being controlled by the Tai Ching rod? At this moment, he recalled his battle with the Yellow Springs swordsman. Originally, he had decided to call it quits with the underworld swordsmen and leave on their own. However, the clear rod controlled his thoughts, causing him to make the decision to kill the Yellow Springs swordsman. Back then, the venerable demonic ape didn't even resist the feedback from the clear chi rod and chose to execute it without any hesitation. Did this prove that he was enslaved? At this moment, the venerable devil ape's heart was filled with doubt and anger. He had been pursuing freedom all his life. His clansmen had once been enslaved by the corpse race, and this had always been a pain in his heart. Because of this, he even cursed his clansmen to be irreconcilable enemies with the Corpse Clan. But at this moment, his experience was very similar to that of his clansmen. At that time, the clansmen did not resist being enslaved by the corpse race at all. They even thought that it was only natural and completely fell under the rule of the corpse race. At this moment, he was just like his clansmen from back then, while the clear chi rod was the corpse clan. With regards to the clear chi rod's feedback, he actually didn't have the slightest bit of doubt or resistance, decisively choosing to carry it out. Was this the freedom he wanted? At this moment, the venerable devil ape thought of many things in the past. Gradually, he came to realize that this clear chi rod seemed to have been manipulating him all along. Many of his decisions were not his own true thoughts, but were instead controlled by this rod that he believed in. You seem to understand. Looking at the venerable demonic ape, the venerable tree retracted his fist and smiled. When the venerable demonic ape heard that, he didn't say a word. Fragments of memories were surging through his mind. At this moment, he felt a hint of resistance towards the clear chi rod in his heart. Ah! Suddenly, the venerable devil ape held his head and let out a miserable shriek. At that moment, he felt the faith mark in his mind begin to flash. This imprint had once grown along with him worshipping the Tai Ching rod. At this moment, because he had the thought of resisting, it flickered with green light, causing the venerable devil ape to feel as if his head was being pricked by needles. However, the immense pain did not make the venerable demonic ape continue to accept the existence of this faith imprint. Instead, it developed an even stronger rejection. The pain grew more and more intense amidst his resistance, as if it was a tight hoop binding him, causing him to be unable to have the slightest thought of resisting the clear chi staff, even to the extent of wanting to erase this thought from his mind. The faith mark flickered with a dazzling radiance, and it continuously dispelled the resistance in venerable devil ape's heart. At this moment, the venerable devil ape was clenching his teeth and hugging his head. His scarlet eyes shone with an ominous glint. "I don't want to be a slave!" Roar. The pained venerable demonic ape smashed its fist on its temple. The excruciating pain caused his body to tremble uncontrollably. However, at this moment, the reverend devil ape's heart was awakened. He would rather die than submit. His rebellious will was extinguished time and time again by the faith imprint, but it grew tenaciously. The spiritual confrontation required great willpower, and it brought endless pain to the venerable demonic ape. He howled and roared to vent his anger. At this moment, the clear chi staff that was suppressed deep underground started to tremble violently, and it formed a connection with the faith mark in the venerable devil ape's mind. This time, it wasn't as simple as extinguishing the venerable devil ape's resistance, it was completely brainwashing him. That was because the artifact spirit within the clear chi staff had already realized that the venerable devil ape was no longer under its control. The faith mark shattered at this moment, and it turned into a wave of energy that dissipated into the venerable devil ape's mind, washing away his consciousness. The howling venerable devil ape suddenly froze on the spot, and a trace of confusion appeared in his eyes. The recasting of his consciousness had begun. The venerable devil ape's consciousness became chaotic at this moment, and it slowly dissipated under the wash of this powerful energy. At the same time, a new consciousness was born in his body. This was the final method that the clear chi staff, artifact spirit used to control the venerable devil ape. If the chess piece could no longer be used normally, then the consciousness of the chess piece would be completely destroyed, and a new consciousness would be recast. Seeing this scene, the venerable tree frowned slightly, but he didn't do anything. Instead, he looked at the venerable devil ape quietly, as if he was waiting for something. As the new consciousness grew, it began to devour the venerable devil ape's consciousness, and it continued to grow. If this continued, the new consciousness would completely replace the venerable devil ape. However, at this moment, the ferocious flames in the venerable devil ape's eyes burned again, and he gritted his teeth and let out a roar. "I don't want to be a slave." Seeing this scene, a smile finally appeared on the venerable tree's face. He knew that his guess was right. That staff was indeed strange, and it was the one that had completely controlled the venerable devil ape. However, he believed that the venerable devil ape could escape, because he was born in the great domain of hell, and the blood of Xitigarbha, who dared to fight against the heavens, and would rather die than succeed, flowed in his body. The bloodline in his body would never allow him to choose to compromise, and suppressing it would only enrage the unyielding consciousness in his body. At this moment, the venerable devil ape's consciousness was like a ferocious beast, and it began to devour this newly born consciousness. Anger was power, and it made the venerable devil ape's consciousness even more violent. This was the power contained in the bloodline left behind by Xitigarbha, and it was filled with destruction, death, unyielding, and war. No one could enslave him, not even the great emperor of the underworld. This time, Xitigarbha's bloodline was completely activated under the pressure from the heavenly realm. Even if it was a thin bloodline, it was enough to turn the venerable demonic ape into an Asura, and its consciousness entered a berserk state. This scene seemed to have happened in the past. At that time, the three great emperors of the netherworld chose to compromise for the sake of this world, and only he, Xitigarbha, refused to bow his head. What treaty of the three realms? What heavenly realm supremacy? Tear it all to shreds. After the treaty of the three realms was established, Xitigarbha used a battle that shocked the three realms to prove his unyielding will. He had used his actions to show what it meant to live in humiliation, and he would rather fight to the death. Xitigarbha had died standing, and his final legacy had forged a large region with the strongest combat power in the underworld. The blood of madness that belonged to Xitigarbha flowed within the bodies of all the natives born here. After the bloodline was completely activated, the obsession that belonged to Xitigarbha completely infected the venerable devil ape. Roar! The roar of the venerable demonic ape reverberated through the heavens and earth. It was also the oppression from the power of the heavenly realm. Endless rage surged in the venerable devil ape's consciousness, and it frantically devoured the newly born consciousness. Even though the Tai Ching rod was restraining the venerable devil ape, it still could not stop the gradual strengthening of the venerable devil ape's consciousness. 1 bite, 2 bites, 3 bites. The blood in the venerable devil ape's body was boiling at this moment. Under the frenzied biting, the new consciousness was devoured before it could completely stabilize. Then, the venerable devil ape's consciousness fixed its eyes on the faith imprint in his mind, and it frantically devoured it again. Time passed, and when the last drop of faith energy in his mind was devoured, the venerable devil ape opened his scarlet eyes, and then let out a furious roar towards the sky. He raised his hands and hammered his chest angrily. Roar! Seeing this scene, the venerable tree smiled and nodded. He knew that the venerable devil ape had succeeded, and he had completely broken free from the Tai Ching rod's control. You did it, I wasn't wrong about you. Looking at the venerable tree, the venerable devil ape had a complicated expression. I clearly killed your friend, why didn't you kill me? Just because he's dead doesn't mean that he doesn't exist anymore. When his God imprint is reincarnated in the 6 paths of reincarnation, he will have a new beginning. Hearing this, the venerable devil ape fell silent. Even at this moment, he still couldn't understand why the venerable tree would treat him like this. If it's possible, I have a request, the venerable tree said. The venerable devil ape couldn't help but be taken aback. Then, he said, I owe you, say it. In the future, when you encounter a battle of this level, even if you win in the end, you must give the other party a chance to live. Why? The venerable devil ape couldn't help but frown. These powerhouses all represent the future, the venerable tree said with a smile. Hearing this, and thinking about what the venerable tree said before, he suddenly realized that the venerable tree's perspective of looking at the problem had already stood on the general trend of the entire underworld. At this moment, he finally understood why the venerable tree would say that being competitive in a corner of the world was not true freedom at all. At this moment, the venerable devil ape suddenly understood. He knew what freedom the venerable tree was pursuing. The enemy that he thought of as freedom was the sky that was pressing down on his head. Different perspectives, and different ways of dealing with problems. Looking at the venerable tree, the venerable devil ape's heart was filled with awe. This was a true powerhouse. He had his eyes on the future of the entire underworld. The battle seemed to be over at this point. This was a battle between ancient gods, and the players cheered in satisfaction. Especially the head-on clash of fists and flesh, it completely inspired the players' determination to become stronger. Because the players all wanted to have such power. The players were looking forward to it. However, the battle suddenly ended, and the venerable tree actually chatted with the venerable devil ape. The players were immediately confused. They couldn't understand why the battle stopped when it was so fierce just now. Could it be an intermission? Therefore, while the players chatted in the livestream channel, they waited expectantly. They were waiting for the outcome of this super battle to be decided. Especially those players who bet on the venerable tree's victory and that they would eat sh*t if they lost. They couldn't wait to at the players who dared to bet with him and watch him eat sh*t once. The players' fun was that simple and boring. However, after waiting for a long time, the battle still didn't break out. Instead, it was the venerable devil ape who began to howl in pain. At this moment, the players in the livestream channel discussed animatedly. They seemed very confused, not knowing what was wrong with the venerable devil ape. Some players guessed that the venerable devil ape had suffered internal injuries from the venerable tree, and now the injuries had erupted. Some players also guessed that the venerable devil ape was not willing to accept defeat and was venting his anger. And one of the players made a guess that was agreed by most of the players. According to this player, the venerable tree was currently engaged in a spiritual battle with the venerable devil ape. Although we couldn't see it, it was definitely very intense. And looking at the situation, it seemed that the venerable tree had gained a great advantage and crushed the venerable devil ape in a spiritual battle. Looking at the venerable devil ape howling in pain, it was obvious. Looking at the players' discussions in the livestream channel, Lu Wu's face was full of question marks. If you guys are so imaginative, why don't you go to Qi to write novels? Chapter 721. Relying on the unyielding will contained in his bloodline, the venerable demonic ape managed to break free from the clear Qi rod's control. At this moment, he was filled with gratitude towards the venerable tree. If it weren't for the venerable tree, he would have been no different from the clansmen who had been enslaved by the corpse race without knowing it. Both of them were being controlled, and both of them had no thoughts of resisting. However, at this moment the venerable tree turned its head and looked to the right. With a wave of its hand, the ground shook and a green tiger tore the earth apart. It appeared with the black iron rod in its mouth, and came to the venerable tree's side. Taking the black iron rod from the mouth of the green tiger, the venerable tree's face turned solemn. Although he didn't have any weapons, his fists had broken countless divine weapons. However, this black iron rod was able to withstand his attacks time and time again. He felt that there was something strange about this rod. Just a moment ago, when the venerable devil ape was completely enraged and attacked him, he clearly remembered that the black iron rod revealed a layer of rust. At that time, it revealed an aura that even moved him. It seemed to be a power that did not exist in the netherworld. However, at this moment, the black iron rod returned to its inconspicuous state, and the greenish-silver radiance was concealed within. In this regard, the venerable tree wanted to find out the truth, and it had a guess in its heart. And the direction he guessed was the heaven realm. In fact, he had long been aware of the heaven realm's chess pieces in the underworld, and he had even personally uprooted several forces that the heaven realm had planted in the underworld. If his guess was correct, this rod was very likely to be one of the chess pieces that the heaven realm had deliberately placed in the underworld. Thinking of this, the venerable tree clenched his fists, and as the tiger roared, his right fist suddenly struck out. The venerable tree did not restrain its strength in this punch. A spatial countercurrent immediately formed at the point of collision and began to tear apart the venerable tree's arm and the Tai Ching rod. The venerable tree remained motionless, and the strength of its right arm continued to increase. Ding! A crisp sound rang out, and the black iron rod trembled at this moment. A patch of rust fell off, revealing part of its greenish-silver body once again. Seeing this, the venerable tree immediately retracted his fist and punched again. With each collision, the rust on the surface of the black iron rod lessened, gradually revealing its true form. Green and silver colors intertwined and changed colors as they flickered. There was a lotus pattern on both ends, and the word upper was engraved at the top of one of them. Seeing this word, the venerable tree frowned slightly and fell into deep thought. Then, its expression suddenly changed. He suddenly remembered who the owner of this stick was. That was an existence that he couldn't afford to offend at all. Even the great emperors of the underworld had to be wary of him. However, the venerable tree did not let go of the struggling Tai Ching rod. Instead, he had the thought of destroying it. At that moment in the heavenly realm, at the heavenly Tao realm, the misty clouds shrouded the pool water, and the lotus in the center area bloomed at this moment. The Grand Supreme, who was healing inside, also opened his eyes. At this moment, his expression was ice-cold, and his eyes flickered with uncertainty. He had originally thought that the venerable devil ape, who was controlled by the clear chi rod, would be able to secretly exhaust the power of the Yin realm. However, he did not expect that the demonic ape, who had already been enslaved by the clear rod, would actually break this shackle, and even break his faith imprint. All of this was clearly beyond his expectations. Xidigarbha's blood? I didn't expect that your bloodline would still be passed on after your death. What a disaster! The Grand Supreme's eyes flickered, and in the end, all his emotions were restrained in his eyes, and his gaze became cold and ruthless again. Since you've been discovered, come back. After muttering these words softly, the lotus closed, and the Grand Supreme once again entered the state of cultivation and healing. He was waiting for the moment to completely recover. At this time, in the second realm of the Naraka realm, the venerable tree was still continuing to destroy the Tai Ching rod. However, no matter how he attacked, although the Tai Ching rod trembled, there was no sign of it being destroyed. At this moment, the rod suddenly trembled, and an unimaginable force erupted, pushing the venerable tree away, and then suddenly flew into the sky. Seeing this, the venerable tree, who had taken a step back, immediately reached out to grab the Tai Ching rod that was flying into the sky. His arm tore through the space and appeared directly beside the Tai Ching rod that had already flown far away, firmly grasping the Tai Ching rod. The two forces immediately wrestled with each other. This time, no matter how the Tai Ching rod struggled, the venerable tree did not let go. From the protruding blue veins on his arm, it could be seen that the venerable tree had used all his strength to restrict the Tai Ching rod from leaving. In such a contest, the surface of the Tai Ching rod once again erupted with a force similar to before, wanting to push the venerable tree away. Seeing this, the venerable tree snorted coldly, stomped on the ground, and the muscles of his right arm suddenly contracted. Vigorous vitality surged in his body, and the power that erupted in an instant caused the Tai Ching rod to suddenly slide down a bit, even resisting the vibrating force of the Tai Ching rod. This time, the Tai Ching rod was unable to resist the power of the venerable tree, and gradually began to slide. After another burst of power, the Tai Ching rod penetrated the spatial crack and appeared beside the venerable tree. Holding the Tai Ching rod, the aura of the venerable tree began to skyrocket. He wanted to try again, but just as he was about to make a move, a gap suddenly exploded in the sky, and then countless figures emerged from within. These figures all had divine seals that belonged to the heavenly realm on their foreheads, and there were hundreds of them. And the person in the lead was the person in charge of the Heavenly Policy Division, Heavenly Mystic Deity. At this time, he looked coldly at the venerable tree below, and after a moment of silence, he said coldly, "I suspect that this rod was left behind by the Heaven-defying Alliance. Hand it over to me for investigation." Heaven-defying alliance? Is that your excuse? The venerable tree said coldly. I don't care what you think, just give me the rod. As he spoke, a dazzling golden wheel bloomed behind immortal Lord Tai Xian, and the energy fluctuations around him were no weaker than the tree venerable. In the face of the oppression of the heavenly mystic immortal Lord, the venerable tree's expression was neither happy nor sad. His right hand was still holding the Tai Ching rod tightly, and he had no intention of giving it up. You should consider clearly whether you want to become enemies with the heaven realm. If you make a wrong decision, you will have to pay the price. Why the nonsense? If you want to snatch it, come. As he spoke, the venerable tree clenched his left fist. Looking at the venerable tree that refused to compromise, the heavenly mystic immortal Lord could not help but frown. He was not afraid of the venerable tree, but the great emperor of the underworld. After all, he was in a hurry to descend to the mortal world this time, and there wasn't enough reason for him to make a move. He could only use the heaven-defying alliance to try to make the venerable tree hand over the Tai Ching rod. Under normal circumstances, no one would be willing to have anything to do with the heaven-defying alliance. Even if they were unwilling, they would still choose to let go. But obviously, the venerable tree did not. Looking at the indifferent venerable tree, the heavenly mystic immortal Lord's expression turned cold this time. This item must be related to the heaven-defying alliance. Since you are so stubborn, I will take it myself. After saying that, the heavenly mystic immortal Lord spoke again. It is the duty of the Heavenly Policies Department. Everything related to the heaven-defying alliance is enforced by us. Please forgive us, Great Emperor. These words were naturally not said to the venerable tree, but to the great emperor of the underworld. As soon as he said that, the heavenly mystic immortal Lord waved his hand, and the deities of the Heavenly Policies Department lined up and began to set up a large array. Seeing this scene, the venerable tree's eyes burned with killing intent for the first time. At this moment, the venerable tree could sense that the strength of the heavenly mystic immortal Lord who was leading this time was not weaker than him. Coupled with the large array, it seemed difficult to fight. In addition, his right hand was controlling the Tai Ching rod, so he could only use his left hand to fight these deities of the heaven realm. Even so, he did not have the slightest thought of compromise, because he knew that he was not alone. How dare you come to the Naraka realm to be so presumptuous? Have you asked for my permission? Accompanied by a hoarse roar, a huge half-human, half-beast figure tore through the space and appeared in the second realm of the Naraka realm. If you want to fight, I, Kuei-ji, will accompany you to the end. Another space crack appeared, and then a huge creature with a twisted horn that looked like a goat descended with a loud bang. The horn was shining with a dim light, pointing upwards. Ha ha ha, this time, you took the initiative to attack, so I have a reason to attack. Great Emperor, don't interfere, let me kill to my heart's content. How can I be left out at a time like this? I'm coming. Bullying the few with numbers? This is indeed the style of the heaven realm, but you have to recognize whose home field this is. I thought it would be a good show, but I didn't expect to attract the scum of the heaven realm. It seems that this rod is not simple. All the more reason not to hand it over. Leave the rod, or all of you stay with the rod. Space cracks appeared one after another in the second realm of the Naraka realm, followed by the deities of the Naraka realm. Previously, during the battle between the venerable tree and the venerable demonic ape, they were like the players, secretly observing with the mentality of watching a show. Even if the venerable tree or the venerable demonic ape died, they would not appear here. However, when they saw the deities of the heaven realm coming to threaten the venerable tree to hand over the Tai Ching rod, they descended at the same time without any discussion. They could ignore the internal strife, and even not interfere, but the deities of the heaven realm dared to humiliate the deities of the underworld, which was a violation of their reverse scale. There was no need for outsiders to interfere in their own affairs, let alone the forces of the heaven realm. The deities who were originally dissatisfied with the forces of the heaven realm had been suppressing their anger, but due to the restrictions of the great emperor, they could not explode and could only choose to endure. However, at this moment, the deities of the heaven realm had taken the initiative to humiliate them, so they had a reason to attack. Looking at the demon gods of the Naraka realm in front of him and feeling the nomological aura emanating from their bodies, the expression of the heavenly mystic immortal lord, who had wanted to snatch the Tai Ching rod, suddenly changed. The advantage of numbers was gone at this moment. The heavenly mystic immortal lord was completely flustered, and hurriedly waved his hand to signal for the formation to stop. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would have to face the joint attack of the deities of the Naraka realm. This was definitely not a power that they could resist. Chapter 7:22. The heavenly mystic immortal lord did not expect that their appearance would attract all the gods and demons of the Naraka realm. In the past, as long as the great emperor did not show up, the Heavenly Strategies Department did not have to worry about external interference. However, this was obviously not possible in the Naraka realm. This was because the strongest group of gods of the underworld's land forces were here. The heavenly mystic immortal lord panicked. Originally, he had planned on forcefully snatching away the clear chi rod. However, with the appearance of the demon gods, doing so would undoubtedly be courting death. Thinking of this, the heavenly mystic immortal lord hurriedly stopped the formation to prevent conflict from intensifying. At the same time, the heavenly mystic immortal lord turned to look at the demon gods. "Everyone, what is the meaning of this?" "You're asking us?" "I should be the one asking you what is the meaning of this. This Een god is a member of the Naraka realm. You brought so many people to threaten him. Do you think we're useless?" The one who appeared first was the one-horned spirit goat who called himself Kuei-ji. As he spoke, Kuei-ji labeled the tree venerable as a member of the Naraka realm. "I, the Heavenly Strategies Department, am here to collect the relics of the Heaven-Defying Alliance. I suspect that this rod is related to the Heaven-Defying plan. According to the original agreement, you are not allowed to interfere in the affairs of the Heaven-Defying Alliance." The heavenly mystic immortal lord replied solemnly. "The Heaven-Defying Alliance? You say this rod is related to the Heaven-Defying Alliance? Then tell me in detail whose weapon it is." Kuei-ji's face revealed a hint of mockery. At this moment, the heavenly mystic immortal lord was speechless. "Even if the great emperor has made an agreement with you that you can investigate the Heaven-Defying Alliance as you wish, you should at least bring out evidence. You can't just accuse the Heaven-Defying Alliance without any proof. Do you believe me if I say that the person behind you is actually a spy for the Heaven-Defying Alliance?" "You!" The heavenly mystic immortal lord's face turned livid. If they were not in the Naraka realm, he would definitely make this impudent spirit goat pay the price in blood. However, the situation was pressing. He knew he had to restrain himself. Evidence that this rod is related to the Heaven-Defying Alliance. Otherwise, don't even think about taking anything away. Another Naraka realm demon god said. "We are only suspecting it. Everything will have to be investigated. As long as you hand over the rod to me, if my judgment is wrong, I will return it and apologize personally. I feel that this rod belongs to my fifth realm. It might be a weapon that I've lost. Why don't I investigate it first? I'll hand it over to you after I've ascertained that it doesn't belong to me?" Yu Sha said with a sinister smile. The atmosphere gradually became deadlocked at this moment. At this moment, the heavenly mystic immortal lord did not dare to make a move. If a battle were to break out, his side would definitely not be a match for the heavenly mystic immortal lord. However, it was impossible for him to leave just like that. This was because it was precisely the Grand Elder's orders that they had come to collect the clear chi rod this time. After a moment of stalemate, a golden light suddenly appeared in the sky, and a figure slowly condensed in the second realm. The heavenly mystic immortal lord and the others were shocked to see this person, and they lowered their heads respectfully. Heavenly Tharch. It was Eastern Monarch Tai. At that moment, the expressions of the demonic gods of the Hell Path changed. They could use their aura to suppress the heavenly mystic immortal lord, preventing him from acting recklessly. But against Dong Wang Tai it was useless, because even if they attacked together, they were no match for Dong Wang Tai. In the entire underworld, only the great emperors could fight against Dong Wang Tai. Thinking of this, many of the demonic gods of the Hell Path cursed in their hearts. Why isn't the old man here yet? They're already at our doorstep. Dong Wang Tai, who had appeared in the second realm, did not look at the demonic gods. Instead, he turned his head to the left and said slowly, "East Peak, come out." As soon as he said that, the space suddenly shook, and the figure of Great Emperor Dong Yu, surrounded by the power of 3,000 laws, appeared. Seeing Great Emperor Dong Yu's appearance, the demonic gods present heaved a sigh of relief. Otherwise, it would be unrealistic for them to negotiate with Dong Wang Tai face to face. They wouldn't be equal in terms of strength. "Dong Wang, it's just a small fight down there. Why are you here? I believe you already know what that rod is." Dong Wang Tai frowned slightly. "I noticed your arrival, so I followed. I don't know what rod is at all." Great Emperor Dong Yu replied with a smile. "Old Great Emperor, they said that this rod belongs to the Heaven-Defying Alliance. They're here to investigate," Kuei-ji hurriedly said, planning to strike first. "So it belongs to the Heaven-Defying Alliance. Let's just give it to them." Great Emperor Dong Yu smiled. "But I don't think anyone in the Heaven-Defying Alliance uses a rod. Why don't you personally identify what this rod is?" Kuei-ji said again. Hearing this, Dong Wang Tai turned around and glared at the heavenly mystic immortal lord. At this moment, he knew that he was in a passive position. Originally, he could have taken the Tai Ching rod directly when he appeared. But now, the heavenly mystic immortal lord said that the rod belonged to the Heaven-Defying Alliance. Since they said it themselves, they naturally could not deny it. Dong Wang Tai felt helpless about this. At the end of the day, it was because the Grand Supreme was still recuperating and could not leave the heavenly realm. This was also one of the secrets of the heavenly realm. Otherwise, the Grand Supreme could have come to take it himself. There was no need for so much trouble. "East Peak, stop pretending. I think you already know that this is the Tai Ching rod. Now that the Grand Supreme is searching for the remnants of the human race in the outer realm, he can't come here. Just return it to us." "The Grand Supreme is in the outer realm? Are you sure? What do you mean?" Dong Wang Tai's expression turned cold. "I haven't seen the Grand Supreme for a long time. I miss him very much. If possible, let him come to take it himself." Dong Wang Tai's heart tightened in the face of East Peak's probing. The Grand Supreme, who was recuperating, was one of the key reasons why the heavenly realm did not destroy the underworld. Back when they were destroying the human race, the Grand Supreme was gravely injured by the human ancestor and had not recovered even now. Although the heavenly realm was still stronger than the underworld, they would have to pay a heavy price if they attacked now. Therefore, they had been waiting for the Grand Supreme to completely recover before shedding all pretense of cordiality. During this period of waiting, the only thing they could do was to weaken the underworld as much as possible so that when the war broke out in the future, they could minimize their own losses. Hearing the Great Emperor of the East Peak's question, Dong Wang Tai realized that the Great Emperor of the East Peak seemed to have noticed something. "Are you sure you want the Grand Supreme to come and take it himself? As long as he comes personally, I will definitely offer this rod to him." "All right." Dong Wang Tai did not waste any more words. His figure gradually disappeared on the spot. Upon seeing this scene, all the godfiends present felt their anger dissipate. Actually, when the Great Emperor of the East Peak appeared, they were even guessing if the Great Emperor of the East Peak would choose to compromise like before. They did not expect the old man to be so strong-willed. This was truly out of everyone's expectations. "Hey you! Arcanum Sky, right? Your master is leaving. Aren't you going to scram? Kuei-ji turned to look at the Arcanum Sky, Immortal Lord, and mocked. You? I'll remember this. The Arcanum Sky, Immortal Lord glared at Kuei-ji, then turned and tore space apart to leave. Seeing this, the other gods of the heavenly realm also tore space apart and left. After the members of the heavenly realm left, the gods of the Hell Path greeted the Great Emperor of the East Peak respectfully. Great Emperor! In fact, they all knew that the reason why the Great Emperors were so tolerant was for the sake of the entire underworld. Even so, they were still suppressing their anger. At this moment, it was the first time that they saw the heavenly realm being humiliated. Their attitude towards the Great Emperor had changed. Hearing this, the Great Emperor of the East Peak did not reply. Instead, he looked at the tree venerable and nodded slightly. Then, he looked at the players who were hiding far away and eating melons. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He knew that the time was almost ripe. All he had to do now was wait. Then, his figure also disappeared on the spot. After the Great Emperor left, the demon gods of the Hell Path also looked at the tree venerable. They did not speak, but their eyes were filled with deep meaning. The tree venerable's strong-willed performance truly made them feel deep respect. From the tree venerable, they saw the shadow of the heaven-defying alliance. This was worthy of their respect. After the demon gods and the tree venerable nodded to show their respect, they tore space apart and chose to leave. They did not communicate with the tree venerable. After the demon gods of the Hell Path left, the tree venerable turned his head to look at the Tai Ching rod that had stopped in his hand. After countless hits with all his might, there was still not a trace left on the Tai Ching rod. He knew that with his ability, he would definitely not be able to destroy this item. Originally, he wanted to hand the rod over to the Great Emperor of the East Peak, but he did not expect the Great Emperor to leave just like that. Obviously, he had no intention of taking the rod with him. At this moment, the tree venerable did not know what to do with the rod. Do you know what exactly this rod is? At this moment, the venerable demonic ape asked. He had always known that this rod was extraordinary, but he did not expect that even the celestial Dharch and the great emperor of the underworld of the heavenly realm would appear because of this rod. At this moment, he was curious and could not help but ask the tree venerable. The Tai Ching rod is the weapon that the celestial Dharch carries with him. Hearing this, the venerable demonic ape was shocked. Thinking of all his previous encounters, his heart suddenly surged with anger at this moment. He realized that he was obviously used as a pawn by the heavenly realm and was being controlled by them. At this moment, the tree venerable handed the Tai Ching rod to the venerable demonic ape. The venerable demonic ape could not help but be stunned. "What are you doing? I don't have the ability to destroy this item. You can keep it." When the venerable demonic ape heard this, he hurriedly shook his head to express his refusal. At this moment, he had a shadow in his heart about the Tai Ching rod. He was afraid that he would be controlled by this rod again. Seeing that the venerable demonic ape did not want this item, the tree venerable was troubled. He did not know where to seal this rod. Just as the tree venerable was deep in thought, a player slowly walked over from afar. The tree venerable and the venerable demonic ape immediately sensed it and turned their eyes to the player who was walking over from afar. While waiting, the player came up to them and asked with a face that was asking for a beating. "What are you talking about? You're not going to fight anymore?" The tree venerable. The venerable demonic ape. Seeing this scene, the players in the livestream could not help but cover their faces. In fact, they understood this rash player. Since the battle was over, they had to consider how to go back. At this moment they were far away from the teleportation portal, and it would take them several hours. It would be faster to die and return to the city for free. However, the players did not expect that there would be players who went straight to the tree venerable and the venerable demonic ape. However, since they had been exposed, the players who were hiding also followed the tree venerable and the venerable demonic ape. They were not afraid at all. After all, they could just return to the city for free. The journey was long, and it was not a big deal to turn off the pain. Chapter 7:23. The words of this player caught the tree venerable and the venerable demonic ape off guard. As more and more players appeared, they quickly formed a circle and looked at the venerable tree and the venerable demonic ape with annoyance. They seemed to be waiting for something. At this moment, the venerable demonic ape could not hold it in any more. He was about to make a move but was stopped by the tree venerable. The tree venerable looked at the players with a puzzled expression. "What's the matter?" "It's nothing. I can't hear what you guys are talking about from afar. I saw you guys chatting for a long time. I want to know what you guys are talking about." "That's right. I thought there would be a winner between you guys. I even bought freshly made by the demonic chef for that iron-headed guy to eat it while it's hot. I didn't expect you guys to end it just like that." Actually, I'm very curious about what you guys are talking about." The players expressed their thoughts at the same time. The tree venerable and the venerable demonic ape, on the other hand, looked confused. They had no idea what they were trying to say. However, there was one thing they could see. These guys were not afraid of them at all. They did not know where they got their courage from. "By the way, are you guys fighting for this stick?" At this moment, a player suddenly pointed at the Tai Ching rod in the tree venerable's hand. Hearing this, the tree venerable frowned slightly. "This thing is a scourge." Hearing this, the players had a look of disbelief. If it was a scourge, why would a group of people fight for it? It was as if they had never played games or read books. In order to find out, the players opened the analysis panel. Tai Ching rod, Holy Spirit item. Item details. Weapon carried by the Celestial Emperor Tai Shang. Contains Holy Spirit energy and Tai Shang's cultivation comprehension. It has developed its own consciousness and has the ability to break all spells. Item hint. Supreme Holy Item. Seeing the analysis panel of this rod, the players were dumbfounded. There were even players who couldn't help but stretch out their hands towards the clear rod. The other players did not know. Now, they only knew one thing. It seemed that if they got their hands on this invaluable rod, it would not be a problem to have any godly equipment, highest-level epic equipment, or custom-made weapons in the future. When the time came to change equipment, they would ask Tong Gua to make 100 custom-made weapons and only use one for themselves. They would throw the rest away and tire him to death. At this moment, some of the players were immersed in the fantasy of becoming rich overnight. At this time, the Tai Ching rod in the hands of the venerable tree was a mountain of soul coins in the eyes of the players, the kind that could not be spent in a lifetime. The players' eyes were glued to the screen. "Brother, why don't you give this scourge to me? Let it scourge me." A player immediately expressed his thoughts, expressing his desire for the Tai Ching rod. Hearing this, before the venerable tree could say anything, the venerable demonic ape could not hold it in any more. "Who the F***ck are you brothers with? Are you even worthy?" At this moment, the irascible venerable devil ape was about to make a move, but he was stopped by the venerable tree. The venerable tree naturally would not agree to the player's request. This was because he didn't feel at ease to hand this rod to weaklings. Otherwise, they would only be bewitched by the clear rod and become the new devil ape reverend. The reason why he was not worried about the honored demonic ape was because the honored demonic ape had already broken free from the slavery of the Tai Ching rod. Therefore, he was at ease handing the rod to venerable devil ape. However, the venerable devil ape was unwilling to accept this rod, and the venerable tree was helpless about it. However, it was absolutely impossible for him to hand it over to the players. Otherwise, there would definitely be a group of new pawns in the underworld. At this moment, the venerable tree's eyes turned cold. He did not kill the strong, but it did not mean that he would not kill the weak. Obviously, these creatures in front of him did not have a clear position. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. "Give them the Tai Ching rod." The appearance of this voice caused the venerable tree, who was about to kill the players, to freeze, and then he was stunned. He was very familiar with this voice. It was the great emperor of the East Mountain. This filled his heart with doubts. He did not understand why the great emperor would hand the Tai Ching rod to these weak creatures. Was he not afraid that the Tai Ching rod would nurture several more venerable devil apes? However, he could not contact the great emperor of the East Mountain at all, so he could not ask the doubts in his heart. However, he naturally trusted the great emperor's decision. Thinking of this, the venerable tree handed the Tai Ching rod to a player in front of him. "Take him away." Seeing this scene, the venerable devil ape's eyes widened. Just now, he saw the venerable tree clenching his fist. He thought that it was about to attack, but he did not expect the sudden change in attitude. It really caught him off guard, and his heart was filled with doubts. "Venerable tree, why did you hand the Tai Ching rod to them?" The venerable tree shook its head. "It's not my decision, it's that person." Hearing this, the venerable devil ape was stunned, but he quickly realized who that person the venerable tree was referring to. At this moment, the way he looked at the players changed. No wonder he was so arrogant, he had such a powerful backer. The player who took the Tai Ching rod was immediately surrounded by happiness. He immediately tried to put the Tai Ching rod into the channel. At this moment, the game notification sounded. Game notification. Because this item has already recognized its owner and is bound, it cannot be put into the channel. The appearance of the game notification was naturally arranged by Lu Wu. It was not that the artifact couldn't contain the Tai Ching rod, but that it couldn't. One must know that this item was the weapon of the Taishang, and it was connected to his mind. If the Tai Ching rod was put into the artifact, it was equivalent to installing a locator. With Lil Bei Li's ability, she could decompose the Tai Ching rod. However, during the time of decomposing, the Taishang would definitely know about the existence of the artifact. This was an extremely risky move. Perhaps the forces of the Heaven Realm would come knocking. Therefore, in Lu Wu's opinion, the Tai Ching rod could be taken, but it must never be brought into the artifact. The player, on the other hand, was at a loss. This was the first time he encountered a weapon that couldn't be put into the channel, and he was very puzzled. After seeing the game notification, he said helplessly in the live chat channel, "It seems like we have to hurry back to Beiki. This thing can't be brought back by suicide." Hearing this, the players looked at each other. Obviously, they had never encountered such a situation before. At this moment, the player holding the Tai Ching rod looked at the venerable tree and said, "Brother, thank you. We'll leave first, goodbye." The player said as he turned around and left with the Tai Ching rod in his arms. When the other players saw this, they immediately followed. After all, there was still a long way to go to bring this rod back to Beiki. During this period they had to protect it well. After all, if they died, the rod that couldn't be put into the channel would only stay where it was and not follow them back to Beiki. Hearing the players calling him and the venerable tree brothers again, the venerable demonic ape's face turned pale. Since when did such a weak creature have the right to call him brother? Are they worthy? Why don't they have any points? However, thinking that it was the great emperor's idea to let this group of creatures take away the Tai Ching rod, he could only swallow his anger. Looking at the players leaving, the venerable tree couldn't help but shake his head at this moment. His heart was still full of doubts. He couldn't understand the great emperor's purpose in doing this. He didn't believe that the great emperor would make a decision for no reason. There must be some secret arrangement. After a few hours, the players hurried all the way and finally brought the Tai Ching rod back to the mansion of the dead safely. However, the players couldn't come to a conclusion on the ownership of the Tai Ching rod. Every player said that everyone who saw it had a share, including the players who were watching the live broadcast. Obviously, the player who got the Tai Ching rod couldn't keep it to himself. In the end, everyone decided to just stick it in the center of the mansion of the dead as a mascot. As the Tai Ching rod was stuck in the center of the Mansion of the Dead, a large number of players came after hearing the news. They all wanted to have a look and touch this artifact. After playing the game for so long, it was the first time the players saw a weapon with such a high evaluation on the analysis panel. Naturally, they were curious. During this period, some players also expressed their opinions about the Tai Ching rod. They said that since the Tai Ching rod couldn't be used, they might as well decompose it to maximize the benefit. Regarding this suggestion, the players who had changed their class to Decomposer raised both their hands and feet in agreement. After all, the Decomposer players had a strange habit of trying to decompose everything to see what elements could be produced. In this regard, the other players didn't have any objections. Therefore, the Decomposer players took action and began to try to use the decomposing skill on the Tai Ching rod, trying to decompose it into the most primitive elemental materials. However, this time, the Decomposer players who claimed to be able to decompose everything were defeated by the Tai Ching rod. No matter how they tried, they couldn't get any powder off the Tai Ching rod, let alone completely decompose it. In the past, when they encountered such a situation, the Decomposer players would head to the Mansion of the Dead library to search for information and seek help. However, this time was different. After their spirit eyes were activated, they couldn't even see through the essence of the Tai Ching rod. Naturally, they couldn't find the corresponding elemental books in the Mansion of the Dead library to find the method of decomposing it. In about 3 days, there was an endless stream of players in front of the Tai Ching rod. In particular, the Decomposer players had even set up a discussion group on the forum in order to decompose the Tai Ching rod. However, after trying many methods, this batch of Decomposer players still gave up. However, in order to save face, they said to the players from the Decomposer Association, "It's not that we can't decompose it, it's just that our skills aren't enough. When our Decomposer skill level increases, decomposing this rod naturally won't be a problem." After the Decomposer players retreated, the players' torment of the Tai Ching rod didn't end. At this time, the hammer-wielding, forging players appeared. Under Lin Tai's lead, they prepared to use the method of dismantling warships and decomposing parts to hammer out fragments that could be smelted from the Tai Ching rod. Therefore, in the next few days of the Mansion of the Dead, the sound of hammering metal could be heard constantly in the central plaza. In order to deal with this rod, the players from the Forging Association even adopted a shift system. There were a total of 6 shifts, each 4 hours, and they launched a continuous hammering on the Tai Ching rod. However, another 3 days passed, and more than 10 of their hammers had been destroyed, but the Tai Ching rod still didn't move an inch. There wasn't even a trace of damage on it. At this moment, the players were completely convinced. They understood that with their current strength, it was still too difficult to deal with this rod. However, even though it was difficult, it was impossible for them to give up just like that. If there was no path, then they would step on it. If there was no way, then they would think of a way. Chapter 724. The research on how to dismantle the Tai Ching rod was carried out in full swing by the players in the following days. Experts in various fields put forward their own suggestions. Most of these suggestions were tried by the players, while a small number of suggestions were completely ignored. For example, the bomberman's suggestion of conducting a super explosive destruction experiment. After this proposal was posted on the forum, it was immediately criticized by the players. They all thought that he was not trying to blow up the Tai Ching rod, but to blow up the Mansion of the Dead again. There were many unreliable suggestions like Niefeng's. The entire forum was discussing how to destroy the Tai Ching rod. Not only did the popularity not decrease over time, but more and more players joined the discussion. Among them, Crayon Shinchan's post was the most popular. As the only god of trolls in the forum, his posts never lacked popularity. On the day it was published, it attracted a large number of players. About how to dismantle the Tai Ching rod, how about this method? Original poster, Crayon Shinchan content. Seeing that everyone is very interested in breaking down the Tai Ching rod, I will also express my opinion, funny. First of all, we will analyze it from the analysis panel. It clearly states that this rod has already given birth to a weapon spirit with its own consciousness. Can we communicate with him? If possible, can we brainwash him and make him recognize him as its master again? Laughing emoji. I haven't tried the above method, I'm just giving a suggestion. I'm not responsible for any losses in the experiment. If you want me to be responsible, then come and hit me, laughing emoji. Reading book breaker. The angle is tricky, but what kind of divine operation is brainwashing? Neptune's shocked emoji JPG? Watermelon_taro. Go to sleep, my dear baby, is that so? Laughing emoji. A_big_wolf dog. Upstairs, this is hypnosis, not brainwashing, laughing emoji. Shueli_the_strongest. Whether it succeeds or not, I have to try and use perseverance to influence him. If one day doesn't work, then 1 month. If 1 month doesn't work, then 1 year. If 1 year doesn't work, then 10 years. If 10 years doesn't work, I'll let my son reconnect him, laughing emoji. Snow White stepmother. Upstairs, you're not trying to influence him, you're trying to move the mountain. The generations are endless, laughing emoji. Old man_leftover_eggs. That's enough, I'm going to search for some poisonous chicken soup articles. Let's see if I can move it and make it obediently recognize me as its master. Anyway, this rod is mine. Finally, I'll give Crayon Shinchan a piece of advice. Arms Akeem. JPG, Crayon Shinchan. Isn't it just a stick? Look at how excited you guys are. There's a lyric that goes like this. I want this iron stick for what? Laughing emoji. This lyric from 300 years ago has already explained why this stick is useless. Laughing emoji. After Crayon Shinchan's post was posted, many players really tried it. Although this method seemed unreliable, Battle Royale players understood that anything was possible in the game. Regardless of whether he would succeed or not, it was impossible for him to succeed if he didn't try. As a result, a large number of players had recently surrounded the clear rod, attempting to brainwash it. Some told stories and some chatted about daily life. As long as there was a topic to talk about, the players used it. The artifact's spirit inside the clear rod was delighted by the player's actions. He thought that he would be sealed away and wait for his master to come and pick him up in a dark place, but he didn't expect that the extremely powerful underworld ancient god didn't do that. They even handed him over to the weak forces of the underworld. To it was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep. It was the tiger and the players were the sheep. At this moment, he thought of a plan. He wanted to brand the same faith imprint in the minds of this race as the venerable Devil Ape. This wasn't the Naraka realm, and there was no Xitigarbha bloodline here. He didn't believe that this race would be able to escape his control after they grew up. After having such an idea, he had been waiting for an opportunity. At this moment, when he saw so many players gathering around him and saying things that he didn't quite understand, he felt that the time was right. The transformation plan had begun. The first step was to build faith. This step wasn't difficult for the artifact spirit. If he wanted this race to worship him like the venerable Devil Ape, he had to give them some benefit. As long as they understood this concept, they would treat him like a god in the future. The artifact spirit already had experience with this step from the venerable Devil Ape. Therefore, in the days to come, when the players came to have a heart-to-heart talk with him, the clear rod would split a portion of its strength and let it flow into the players' bodies. It would then start to establish a connection with the players and share the cultivation experience contained in the clear rod. From the player's perspective, every time the clear rod bestowed strength, a game notification would sound. Frowny face game notification. Obtain the strength bestowed by the clear rod. All attributes +1 game notification. Obtain the strength bestowed by the clear rod. All attributes +3 game notification. Obtain the knowledge bestowed by the clear rod. Secret manual, Heavenly Dragon physical conditioning technique. Game notification. Obtain the knowledge bestowed by the clear rod. Secret manual, spirit tempering technique. With the implementation of the clear rod's faith plan, the players went completely crazy. A rod that delivered opportunities. What a fraud! This news completely ignited the enthusiasm of the players. They didn't expect Crayon Shinchan's unreliable suggestion to have such a miraculous effect. Therefore, a large number of players came to the clear rod in an attempt to obtain opportunities from it. This popularity even had a chain reaction to the European server forum, and the European server players also went crazy. If it wasn't for the fact that the Mansion of the Dead didn't allow them to enter and that they couldn't defeat the original players, they would have trampled the Mansion of the Dead and brought the rod back. However, due to the large number of players, it also caused the central square of the Mansion of the Dead to become very congested. At this moment, a player suggested on the forum to queue up to receive opportunities. This kind of opportunity could be given to everyone, and the Mansion of the Dead could also restore its order without affecting others. This suggestion was responded by a large number of players. Under the joint efforts of the major guilds, a long queue quickly formed in the central square. The number of people was so spectacular that it even extended out of the entrance of the Mansion of the Dead. While queuing up, the players browsed the forum, watched videos, and posted comments in an orderly manner. During this period, from time to time, players would share the opportunities they had obtained and show off in the regional chat channel. This behavior further ignited the desire of the players to communicate with the clear rod. Although they might not get the opportunity even if they queued for 3 days and 3 nights, the players didn't care about this little bit of time. In the eyes of the players, time was nothing compared to the opportunity. They had waited for more than 3 years for such a free opportunity. Now that they finally had the opportunity, they naturally cherished it very much. Lu Wu, who was behind the scenes, already knew the plot of the artifact spirit inside the clear rod. He couldn't stop smiling. What a stupid rod! How dare it give opportunities to the players and even try to control them? Have you asked me? Don't ask, just continue. Good luck. Half a month quickly passed in this kind of crazy harvesting opportunity. At this time, the clear rod realized that something was wrong. This was because the players he communicated with every day were different. This puzzled the clear rod. In his opinion, if the high-level members of the clan knew that he could bestow opportunities, they should have taken it for themselves. By then, he could take the lead in controlling the high-level members, just like how he first controlled the leader of the demonic ape clan, the venerable demonic ape. This was very normal in the underworld. Even the members of the same clan would be divided into different levels. Naturally, the high-level members would enjoy the good stuff first. However, it had been 15 days and no so-called high-level members of the clan had appeared. Every day, different members would meet with him. This made the clear rod's artifact spirit very depressed. Although he had a huge power source and knowledge reserve, these things would also be exhausted. However, these things would also be used up. It wasn't that they were endless, it was just that the reserves were extremely large. Moreover, he could give the venerable demonic ape an endless supply of body repair power, but it wasn't an endless supply. This power came from the lake water in the heavenly Tao realm, and the technique that the venerable demonic ape cultivated was taught by him. The body that was forged could absorb the power of the spring water and turn it into energy to repair its body. However, the spring water contained within the rod wasn't endless. If it continued to be consumed, it would eventually be exhausted. Although it was far from that state, the uninterrupted consumption for 24 hours was a bit too much for the clear rod's artifact spirit. Moreover, apart from the power source, the knowledge contained within the clear rod wasn't something that could be used repeatedly. As an artifact spirit, it hadn't cultivated these cultivation methods and secret techniques before. It was just a portion of the memories that the Grand Supreme had imprinted within the rod. In other words, every time it gave away, there would be one less, and it couldn't be duplicated or used repeatedly. However, when it thought about how every time it injected power, it would carry a trace of faith power. If this continued, it would be able to control this clan sooner or later. In the end, the Clear Rod's artifact spirit chose to endure. It felt that controlling an entire clan at once was fine. However, what the Clear Rod's artifact spirit didn't know was that every time it injected power into a player's body, it had already been filtered by the artifact. The remaining power was used by the artifact to strengthen and modify the player's bodies. It could be said that it was a completely one-sided effort, the kind that wouldn't get anything in return. As for faith, that was even more impossible. The players didn't believe that the gods could bring them any benefits. They only believed that the stingy dog officials could do anything.